Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sherlock Holmes. Now I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the case. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. Story 1 will explore a case that occurred at a shopping mall in Stanley, Hong Kong in 2007 around 7:00 p.m. On June 25th, a woman living in the Stanley area was walking her dog when she reached Wang Na Road. Her dog suddenly started behaving strangely. It refused to continue walking and instead ran to a nearby sewer, barking incessantly as if trying to warn its owner about something unusual. Curious, the woman approached to take a closer look. Looking down, she saw a suitcase at the bottom of the sewer surrounded by a swarm of flies. Mag were crawling out of the suitcase zipper, and a horrific stench emanated from it. Witnessing this terrifying scene, she felt chills run down her spine and quickly called the police. After receiving the report, the police promptly arrived at the scene. They found a suitcase standing upright at the bottom of the sewer. They quickly pulled it up when they opened the suitcase. They indeed witnessed a horrifying sight. Inside was a severely decomposed body of a woman. She was fully clothed, curled up with her head covered by a bag revealing shoulder-length wavy blonde hair. A green electrical cord was wrapped around her neck. The unfortunate woman's body was severely decomposed and bloated with flies continuously crawling out from her clothes. The police searched the area but found no evidence that could identify the victim. As the victim's face was unrecognizable, the police had to use DNA collection and dental records for identification. Finally, they identified the victim through missing persons records. The victim was Yoon, 56 years old, a beauty expert. She managed a beauty salon at the UF Shopping Center on Aberdeen Avenue. 5 days earlier, on June 2007, her ex-husband had reported to the police station that his ex-wife Yoon was missing. The police investigated and learned that the ex-husband's name was Chu Ru Xing, a bus driver. They had a son who was currently living with his father. Chu Ru Xing told the police that although he and Yuan were divorced, they still had feelings for each other. They were currently mending their relationship and planning to remarry. Chu Ru Xing recounted, "My ex-wife had arranged to help me sell tickets on the bus on June 20th, but by the end of my shift I still hadn't seen her. She was always punctual and had never stood me up without notice. Before worried, I tried calling her, but her phone was turned off my son, and I then went to her beauty salon to look for her. But the staff didn't know where she was either. Feeling that something was wrong, I decided to report her missing to the police tragically. Just 5 days after filing the report, he had to face the harsh reality that his ex-wife had passed away. The police investigated Yin's beauty salon and discovered bloodstains on the carpet and a pair of sneakers. After DNA testing, they confirmed the blood belonged to the victim, Yoon. They then reviewed the surveillance footage from the UFI shopping center. The footage showed that on June 19th, Yufan entered the building alone and wasn't seen leaving around 2 p.m. That day, a suspicious woman entered the building and went to the beauty salon shortly after around 2:30 p.m. Two suspicious men pulling a suitcase also arrived at the beauty salon about 30 minutes later. The three people left the beauty salon with the suitcase. After exiting the building, the woman hailed a taxi on the street. The two men lifted the suitcase into the trunk of the taxi. The suitcase appeared to be quite heavy through the license plate number. The police quickly found the taxi driver who had driven the three people that day. According to the taxi driver, on June 19th, he indeed had 3 passengers with a suitcase in his car. The 3 people got off at Wang Na Road in Stanley. This was close to where the suitcase containing the victim's body was found. Therefore, the police suspected that these 3 people had conspired to kill Yuan, then stuffed her body into the suitcase and dumped it in the sewer. But why did they kill Yoon? The police provided images of the 3 suspects extracted from the surveillance footage to the immigration department. Subsequently, the police arrested a man and a woman at Luo Hort. They were the 2 people who had appeared in the surveillance footage that day. The whereabouts of the other man remained unknown. The arrested man was named Hangzong Rong, 32 years old, from Guangzhou, who dealt in mobile phones. The woman was a close friend of Yoon named Yuan Mun. 52 years old, who worked as an assistant at a traditional Chinese medicine clinic. The police interrogated the two suspects separately. It turned out that behind this was a complex love affair involving multiple parties. During the interrogation, both suspects quickly confessed and mentioned another accomplice named Bi Chong, the mastermind of the crime, who is currently on the run. Ba Chong, 60 years old, came to Hong Kong from mainland China. In the early 1970s, he met a woman surnamed Zhu, who was running a tutoring school. After dating for a while, they married and had a daughter to make a living. Bi Chong studied traditional Chinese medicine and obtained a license to practice his wife, then invested in opening a traditional Chinese medicine clinic. For him, occasionally, Bi Chong would help at his wife's tutoring school. With their joint efforts, both the clinic and the tutoring school developed. Well, however, their marital relationship deteriorated quickly due to the appearance of a third person. That person was Yun, the victim. In this case, Yuan was born into a fishing family in Hong Kong and was the eldest daughter to reduce the burden on her parents. She dropped out of school early and worked various jobs such as selling clothes on the street and selling insurance. Later, unsatisfied with her current life, she started taking beauty courses. She worked as a makeup artist for clients. While also selling insurance, she even won an Outstanding Salesperson award at her company. Over time, Yuan's beauty skills became increasingly proficient, and she gained many loyal customers to expand her business. She opened a beauty spa at the UFI shopping center in Hong Kong while also selling some fashion items. By chance, Yufan met and fell in love with a bus driver named Chu Ruxing. They got married and had a son. The family of three lived quite happily and harmoniously. Yufan cared a lot about her son's education. When her son was 12, she enrolled him in a cognitive development class which happened to be run by Bi Chang's wife. B.J. Ching often came to the class to help his wife. This is how Yufan met Bi Ching. Unexpectedly, when they met, they found they had a lot in common. They began to meet frequently and share their entrepreneurial experiences. Both felt they had found a kindred spirit who truly understood them. Gradually, their relationship developed into something special. Although both were betraying their families, they decided not to hide it and chose to divorce their spouses to be together. After bus driver Chu Ruxing discovered his wife's affair, the couple had a fierce argument in a moment of anger. Yufan left home soon after they officially divorced. As for Bi Chang's wife, after discovering her husband's affair, she demanded that he leave Yun, but Bi Chen used their children as leverage and demanded a divorce. His wife eventually agreed. Yun and Bi Ching quickly moved in together after their divorces. After his divorce, Bi Chang received a considerable amount of assets. He had a house, a car, and money in the bank. But before long, he had squandered everything and was left with only his traditional Chinese medicine clinic to help her husband regain his spirits. Yufan often went to the clinic to help. She even introduced her beauty salon customers to her husband's traditional medicine services. Thanks to Yuan's persuasive skills, she brought many business opportunities to her husband. Gradually, the clinic's business recovered. Later, the couple expanded their business to in tutoring classes, a fashion store, and a weight loss center. Everything seemed to be developing well in 2001, as Fan learned that her close friend Yuan Meo was looking for a job to help her friend. She introduced Yuan Miun to her husband's clinic as an assistant. Yuan Min was married with 3 children and lived in the Wafu area. Yun and Yuan Min had been close friends for many years, as close as sisters in. Introducing this job, Yufan thought she could help her. Her friend solve her employment problem while also helping her husband reduce his workload. It seemed like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but she never expected that this act of kindness would lead to disaster. After Ba Chang met Yan Meo Fun, and they started working together at the clinic, seeing each other daily. Their relationship gradually became closer. A woman's sixth sense is often quite accurate. Gradually, Yufan began to notice something was wrong. She felt her husband was treating her more coldly, so she began to suspect that her husband and her best friend were having an affair. When Yuan questioned Bi Chang, he strongly denied it, insisting that he and Yuan Min had a purely professional relationship, but in reality, Bi Chang no longer had feelings for Yuan. However, he didn't want a divorce yet because his wife was talented and could bring him many customers. and he didn't want to lose such a promising business partner. Sometime later, Yufan discovered her husband's ambiguous rel relationship and confirmed her suspicions one day. In 2003, Yuan unexpectedly went to the clinic and caught Ba Jiangchang in the act of cheating with Yuan Myun. At this point, Bi Jiangchang could no longer deny it. When betrayed by her closest friend and husband, Yufan felt furious, but still gave her husband another chance. She demanded that Bi Jiangchang immediately leave Yuan Myun, but to her surprise, her husband flatly refused, immediately proposed a divorce, and quickly moved out after their divorce. Bi Jiangchang and Yuan Min officially became a couple. Yuan's fate now mirrored that of Ba Jiangchang's ex-wife. Perhaps karma spares. No one Weifan felt deeply hurt by the betrayal, perhaps due to loneliness and reflecting on how she had wronged her ex-husband. She took the initiative to reconnect with Chiu Ruing, wanting to mend their relationship and make up for past mistakes in her spare time. Yufan often went to her ex-husband's bus to help sell tickets. Although Bi Jiangchang and Yufan had divorced, they had previously opened many businesses together, so they couldn't immediately cut all ties due to their many business connections. After being betrayed by Ba Jiangchang, Yuan was no longer the same. She stopped helping to attract customers to Bi Jiangchang's clinic and stopped managing his tutoring classes and fashion store. Without Ian's management, the businesses began to decline. Soon they all closed one by 2007. Apart from the clinic, Bi Jiangchang had no other business operations. On the other hand, Yuan's beauty salon was still thriving, which made Bi Jiangxiang very resentful and uncomfortable. He was jealous of his ex-wife's success and felt bitter that she no longer helped to manage his businesses, leading to the closure of all his stores. Bi Jiangchang blamed Yun for all his business failures, and gradually the idea of revenge began to form in his mind. Therefore, Bi Jiangchang and Yuan Main began to plan their revenge against Yun on June 17, 2007, following Ba Jiangchang's instructions. Yuan Main went to Shenzhen and found two people, Heng Xiangrong and Yunji. Heng Xiangrong was from Guangzhou, had studied psychology at university and had worked as a psychologist at a hospital. Later, he switched to a real estate brokerage, opened a real estate company, and dealt in electronic components. In 2005, he became unemployed and made a living by selling phones online. He was a business partner with Yuanji. Heng Xiangrong was introduced to Bi Jiangchang by Yuanji. Whenever Heng Xiangrong came to Hong Kong, Bi Jiangchang would arrange accommodation for him. Both Heng Xiangrong and Yuanji had failed in their businesses. Fortunately, they had a close relationship with Ba Jiangqiang, who had voluntarily lent them 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, about $1,280, due to this debt of gratitude and the unpaid loan. They chose to comply with all of Ba Jiangchang's requests. After Yuan Min met the two in Shenzhen, she said that Ba Jiangchang needed them for a job. Bi Jiangchang called and told them that his ex-wife Yen was having an affair with another man. She also owed him a large sum of money. Bi Jiangchang wanted the two to come to Hong Kong to teach her a lesson. After completing the task, all their debts would be cleared if they did well. Bi Jiangchang promised to give them a bonus. Then Yu Huanmin gave Heng Xiangrong and Yuji a suitcase. Inside was a letter and a package of white powder. The letter mentioned that they needed to find a way to kill Wai Shopen and instructed the two to meet Yan Min when they arrived in Hong Kong, who would help them complete the plan. Although Heng Xiangrong and Yuanji knew that the task Bi Jiangchang assigned was murder, they decided to agree in order to clear their debts. On June 18, 2007, Heng Xiangrong and Yanji brought the suitcase to Hong Kong. According to Yuan Main's arrangement, they stayed at a hotel in Tongo. In the room, the three discussed their next plan of action. Yuan Min told Heng Xiangrong and Yanji that the location of the action was the W Shopping Center in Hong Kong, where Yin's beauty salon was located. On June 19, 2007, they began their action. It was the Dragon Boat Festival and Yen's beauty salon was closed, but Yuan Main used the excuse of discussing business to arrange a meeting with her. During their conversation, Yuan Main took the opportunity to put the white powder into Wai Xin's cup of water. Soon after, Yixin felt tired and gradually fell asleep in her chair. Yuan Main seized the opportunity to take Yen's money and jewelry. then called Hong Shangrong and Yuanji, who were waiting nearby to take action in the surveillance camera footage. The two men were heavily disguised to conceal their identities. Wang Shangrong wore a baseball cap, while Wenny wore a mask that covered most of his face. They pulled a suitcase into the beauty salon. Then they took out a prepared cord and strangled Yopen until she stopped breathing. Next, they put the body into the suitcase but discovered blood coming from Yen's mouth, so they used an additional bag to cover her head to prevent blood from dripping onto the floor. Finally, Hang Zongrong and Yuanji pulled the suitcase containing the body out of the building. Yuan Main hailed a taxi, and all three got in with the suitcase in the trunk. The taxi drove to Wang Makoki Road and stopped. The three got out, pushed the suitcase to a nearby sewer. Wang Xiangrong and Yanji together threw the suitcase into the sewer. After finishing, all three took another taxi to a shopping mall to buy new clothes and change in the restroom, discarding the clothes they had worn during the crime. Then Yuan Main found a shop to exchange Hong Kong dollars for Chinese yuan. For the two men, all three returned to the hotel around 10:30 p.m. That night after dinner, Hang Xiangrong and Yuanji quickly took a train back to Shenzhen. The transaction had cleared their debts, making them feel greatly relieved. They thought their actions were perfect and left no loose ends. But reality proved otherwise. The day after the crime, on June 20th, 2007, Chu Ruing discovered his ex-wife was missing and couldn't be contacted. He remembered that Yuan had said she would go to the beauty salon on the 19th to meet Yuan Main for business, so he called Yuan Main to ask about his wife's whereabouts, but Yuan Main claimed the early morning on June 21st. 2007, Yuan Main, fearing the crime might be exposed, hurriedly fled from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, China. After Chu Ring's report, the police quickly contacted Yuan Main. She claimed, "I really don't know Yuan's whereabouts on June 23rd. The police contacted Yuan Main again. She said, "I'm working in Guangzhou and don't know anything." 6 days after the crime, a pedestrian discovered Yifan's body in the sewer. 2 months later, the police successfully arrested Yuan Main and Hang Xiangrong at Lu Port. During their detention, the police tried to track down the other accomplice, Yuanji, but failed 1 year after the crime on September 8th. 2008, the trial was held at the Hong Kong High Court. Yuan Main and Hang Xiangrong were charged with conspiracy to murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body at the trial. The prosecutor presented many pieces of physical evidence of the crime, including the suitcase containing the body. But the two defendants suddenly changed their previous statements. They denied committing murder and only admitted to helping dispose of the body under Bo Jing's instructions. Defendant Yuan Main claimed at the time of the crime, "I was just sitting on the stairs. I didn't know what happened in the beauty salon and didn't know there was a body in the suitcase." She further stated, "Bijong and I were just business partners. We hadn't met for half a year before the incident. Only when the crime occurred did I receive a call from Bi Juning, asking me to help arrange a meeting with Yoan at the beauty salon. I didn't know what happened afterward." However, on the day of the crime, when I went to the beauty salon, I accidentally met Ba Zhongqing. Only when the body was discovered did I learn that Ba Zhongqing had killed Yen, fearing I would be implicated. I fled Hong Kong. That night, the other defendant, Hang Shangrong, also tried to deny his previous statement. He claimed on the day of the crime, UNWJI and I went to the beauty salon under Ba Jing's instructions to move some items. But when we arrived, we discovered Ba Juning strangling the victim Ice Open to death because we owed Bi Juning a lot of money. He used that to promise to clear our debts if we helped him dispose of the body, so we reluctantly agreed to help. Moreover, both defendants claimed their previous confessions were coerced under police threat. Defendant Yuan Main even accused the police of using violence. They pressed hard on my chest during interrogation, making it hard for me to breathe when I was forcibly taken to the police station. I was hit on the head and chest by an officer. I only confessed because I was afraid of being tortured. Although the two defendants changed their statements, the surveillance footage from the UF shopping center where Yin's beauty salon was located did not show Bao Juning entering or leaving, so there was no evidence proving he was present at the time of the crime. Since January 2007, Bi Juning had never returned to Hong Kong after leaving Lohu Port. Therefore, the judge believed Ba Zhongyin had an alibi. The changed testimonies of the two defendants, Yuan Main and Hang Zongrong, were deemed unreliable. A month later, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. The court found the two defendants Yuan Main, and Hang Xiangrong. Guilty of conspiracy murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body, the court declared all charges established and sentenced both defendants to life imprisonment at the trial. The son and younger sister of the victim Yuan were also present to hear the verdict. The sister expressed the law is very fair. I sincerely thank the dedicated police for bringing the perpetrators to justice. Justice will never be absent. Yuan's son also stated, although she had wronged my father and me before, I never blamed her. I'm not sure if Ba Zhongqing is the mastermind, but I hope the Chinese police will soon catch the remaining suspects on January 2010. Wang Shangrong's appeal was rejected. The appeal court believed the trial judge had made a mistake in instructing the jury, so they accepted Yuan Main's appeal on July 29, 2010. Yuan Main's appeal hearing was held at the High Court. After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously upheld the life sentence for Yuan Main. However, she still refused to accept the verdict finally on July 10, 2013, the Hong Kong High Court rejected the appeal and upheld the original verdict. The pursuit of the two remaining suspects in the case Bi Jiangqing and Yenia continues. It was reported that in August 2010, the Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Council announced that among the recently registered practitioners, there was someone named Ba Zhongqing. However, it was later verified that he was not the suspect the police were looking for. In this case, Yuan Main and Hang Xiangrong have received their due punishments, while Bi Jiangqing and Yuana have disappeared without a trace. The Hong Kong police have cooperated with Chinese police multiple times, but without results. Some say they are still alive somewhere, while others believe they may have done something drastic out of fear of punishment. This story is not just about a murder case, but also a painful lesson about betrayal, greed, and the consequences of selfish actions. At the same time, it shows us that justice may be slow, but it will eventually be served. Story 2 will explore a criminal case that shocked China in 2013 around 5 a.m. On June 30th, 2013, on Liu Island in Guangdong Province, two island workers were cleaning when they unexpectedly discovered something stuck near a rocky outcrop. Upon closer inspection, they found it was a suitcase. However, this suitcase looked very strange because it had an iron cage welded around it made from metal pipes. Not only that, but the cage was also wrapped in chains and locked. The suitcase looked relatively new and undamaged, unlike something discarded due to age. But with such careful protection, could there be something valuable inside? However, the suitcase was emitting a strong, foul odor. After consideration, the island workers decided to call the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene as soon as they removed the iron cage and opened the suitcase. The sight inside shocked everyone. Present inside the suitcase was a headless corpse in an advanced state of decomposition. Forensic examination revealed that the victim was female, about 20 years old, approximately 5 feet 3 inches tall, and had died about a month earlier. Beyond this, the police found no clues that could identify the victim either inside or outside the suitcase. Therefore, the police formed a special task force to investigate this case. Fortunately, forensic experts quickly provided useful information. They discovered a tattoo on the front of the victim's thigh near the knee. The tattoo looked like a cat, but also somewhat resembled a seahorse. There were no residents living on Liu Island, so this body couldn't have come from there. There were also no drag marks outside the suitcase. The task force speculated that it had likely drifted from Shagan City a few miles from Liu Island. With this assumption, they immediately began reviewing recent missing persons cases in Shan during their search. One woman quickly caught the police's attention. This missing person was close in age to the body in the suitcase, and her name was Zhang. Years ago, she and her husband had come to work at a factory in Shawan on April 8, 2013. She had gone out to work and hadn't returned since that day. Her husband had searched for her all over Shawan for months, even going to several other provinces to look, but without results. Was the body in the suitcase the missing Zhang? After further verification, the task force learned that Zhang had no tattoos on her body and she was the mother of 3 children. Meanwhile, forensic examination of the body in the suitcase showed that she had never given birth. It seemed that Jing and the victim were not the same person. Next, the task force continued to screen other missing person cases in Sichuan but found no records with characteristics matching the discovered body. This caused their investigation scope to expand rather than narrow. If the Vic wasn't from Shagan, then the police could only look for clues upstream from Shagan Port. But Shagan Port has 3 rivers flowing not only through urban areas but also connecting to many neighboring cities with populations in the millions. Therefore, the task force contacted the police in these cities for assistance, but the feedback also showed that no missing persons were found with characteristics similar to the victim. At this point, members of the task force began to feel worried. How could they find one person in such a vast sea of people? Typically, dismemberment cases like this are due to either love affairs or grudges. The reason for dismemberment is that the perpetrator doesn't want the police to discover the victim's identity. While the investigators were unsure where to start their investigation, the forensic experts once again provided new clues during the examination. They removed 2 round objects from the victim's chest, each weighing about a pound, golden in color and nearly transparent. The forensic experts suggested these could be silicone implants used by women for breast augmentation after confirmation with a local cosmetic surgery facility. The forensic experts' hypothesis was verified. Moreover, they provided some important information to the police. The doctor from the cosmetic hospital said these silicone implants had an English brand name belonging to a British brand called NR. The sole authorized distributor of this brand in China was located in Wuhan. They kept detailed records of sales through this information. It might be possible to find the victim's identity with this important clue. The task force immediately set off for Wuhan. They quickly obtained the sales statistics from the distributor. This silicone brand had sold a total of 29 pairs. Nationwide, distributed among more than 10 hospitals, and 15 women had used them. Through the contact information left by those who had surgery, investigators were able to contact 14 people. Only one person in Juhe, Guangdong could not be reached. The task force immediately shifted from Wuhan to Juhe. There they obtained the records of this woman from the cosmetic hospital. The woman who couldn't be contacted was named Jean Chinku, then only 22 years old, from Ulanguang SE. She had undergone 6 cosmetic surgeries at this hospital on April 23, 2013. She had her final surgery, which was breast augmentation, comparing with the hospital's medical records. The serial number of the silicone implant she had used matched exactly with the pair found on the victim's body after the surgery for safety. Reasons: the hospital had required her to come for regular checkups, but Jean Chinku didn't show up for her scheduled checkup on June 10th after contacting her family. The police learned that since June 8th, her phone had been unreachable. Jane Chin Kui had come to work alone in Juhe since she was 17. She had a cheerful, lively personality. Later, she even opened her own clothing store, but recently, due to a poor business, she had to close it. Before the incident, she was looking for a new job. Therefore, her family didn't pay much attention at first, but when they still couldn't contact her, they felt something was wrong. So Jean Chinu's father reported to the police. Jean Chin-ku's older sister also told investigators her younger sister had gotten a tattoo very early on, and it was of a cat. There couldn't be too many such coincidences to further verify. The Shagan police asked the Ulan side to take DNA samples from Jean Kinky's parents. After comparison, the results confirmed that the headless female body found on Lu Island was indeed Jean Chinku on July 4, 2013. 4 days after the case occurred, the police finally identified the victim, but Juhe is more than 250 miles from Shagan. What had happened to her that she was dumped so far away? During the investigation, the investigators discovered that the last place Jean Chinku disappeared from wasn't Juhe, but Shenzhen, over 60 mi away. According to a friend of Jean Chinku, her boyfriend had gone on a business trip to Shenzhen, so she had gone there with him on June 6th. After arriving in Shenzhen, she had stayed at a friend's house. But because this friend happened to have something to do far away, they only met briefly before parting. After that, Jean Chinku had stayed alone at this friend's house until noon on June 8th. Jean Chinu had called her friend saying that after noon she had an appointment with a photographer for an art photo shoot. She sounded quite happy, but after that, no one could contact her anymore. The investigators checked Ji Chink's call history. She had 2 phones. The last call on one phone was at 12:40 p.m. on June 8th. On the other, the last call was at 2:42 p.m. the same day. And the contact was the photographer who had arranged to take photos with her. The neighbor of the friend also said they had seen Jean Chinku go out around 3 p.m. that day and hadn't seen her return. After that, could that photographer be the killer? The task force immediately began investigating him very quickly. Ji Chu's friend revealed that actually the first person to discover she was missing was this photographer, because that afternoon he had waited for a long time without seeing her arrive. He had called to complain that Jean Chinku had canceled the appointment and deceived them. At that time, there were two other colleagues who had arrived at the meeting place. They had prepared the equipment, but she didn't show up and her phone was unreachable. This statement was also confirmed by the photographer's two other colleagues. After that, the police temporarily ruled out suspicion against them. Although the killer hadn't been found at this point, the police could confirm that the time Jean Chinku met with foul play was around 3 p.m. that day. Next, the police began to investigate her activity schedule from the time she went missing backward. The results showed that this time to Shenzhen, she didn't go alone, but with her boyfriend. It's just that after arriving in Shenzhen, her boyfriend immediately went abroad and left Jean Chinku alone at the friend's house. This boyfriend had known her for 2 years. He was from Hong Kong, mainly doing business abroad, and had quite good financial conditions. He treated Jean Chinku very well, giving her a monthly allowance and even hired a separate housekeeper to take care of her. However, through investigation, the police discovered that Jean Chinku had secretly betrayed her boyfriend. According to friends, she had met an online friend from Fuan about half a month before the incident. She had even traveled with this friend. Moreover, she was planning to break up with her current boyfriend. If so, for the boyfriend, this betrayal would certainly be unacceptable. So could this boyfriend have killed Jean Chinku? Upon deeper investigation, the police discovered that at the time before and after Jean Chinku met with foul play, her boyfriend was not in China. It was only after learning that his girlfriend was missing that he hurried back. Before that, he didn't even know that his girlfriend had betrayed him. Thus, Jean Ching's boyfriend had neither the time to commit the crime nor the motive. Suspicion against him was temporarily ruled out. At this point, Jean Chinu's friend provided another piece of information to the investigators. She said this time Jean Chinu came to Shenzhen under the guise of seeing off her boyfriend who was going abroad, but in reality it was to meet that online friend from Fuan. This online friend had told Jean Chinu that he would also be in Shenzhen those days and would come to see her, according to the investigation. This online friend was 38 years old, divorced, and normally made a living as a loan shark. After thorough investigation, they found that on the day Jean Chinku went missing, he was still in Fuan. It wasn't until 3 days after she went missing that he came to Shenzhen. Thus, suspicion against this online friend was also temporarily ruled out. Jean Chinku didn't have complex social relationships, so the possibility of being killed out of revenge was low. All the people related to her had been ruled out one by one, so who had acted so cruel towards her? In fact, the police not only investigated Jean Q's social relationships, but also simultaneously investigated the items that went missing with her, such as mobile phones, bank cards, etc. The police discovered that Jean Chinku had 6 bank cards, but they had all disappeared along with her. Later, one of these cards was used to withdraw $9,200 from ATMs in 3 transactions. Through surveillance cameras, it could be seen that the person who came to withdraw money was the same man each time he had deliberately tried to conceal his face, such as putting a band-aid on his nose or intentionally making strange facial expressions, etc. This man successfully withdrew money each time, indicating that he knew Jean Chu's bank card passwords. Who is this mysterious man at this point? The investigators of the task force discovered another piece of information from Jean Chu's boyfriend. It turned out that her boyfriend was married and had 2 children in Hong Kong because his work was mainly focused in mainland China. And abroad, he and his wife had been living apart for a long time after meeting Jean Chinku. The two had lived together. The police immediately began investigating the Hong Kong boyfriend's wife. But after investigation, they found that this woman had never had any contact with Jean Chinku. Moreover, the boyfriend had also said that his wife knew nothing about his infidelity She was bound at home with 2 children, so she had no time to know about other things. It seemed that she was also not the mastermind behind Jean Chu's murder. After reviewing all of the victim's social relationships and still unable to find a breakthrough, the police found themselves in a passive position. It seemed that the police needed to change their investigative direction. At this time, the police in charge of tracking Jean Chinu's belongings sent back information. Her 2 mobile phones had been sold from an electronics store in Shenzhen. The person who sold the phones was named Hang Shushan, 28 years old, working at a counter in this electronics store. When the police arrived, the boss said that Hang Zushan had gone back to his hometown in Shan. Hearing this, the police felt hopeful. Wasn't this where the victim's body had been discovered? Jin Chin Ku had just met with foul play and Hang. Zushan had gone back to his hometown. Could this be a coincidence? After analysis, the police believed that W. Shushan was highly suspicious of criminal behavior. It was now the 7th day after Jean Chinku met with foul play. To avoid prolonging the time, the task force immediately set off for Shan. However, when faced with questions from the task force, Hang Sushin appeared quite flustered. He said he didn't know Jian Chinku at all, and those 2 phones were sold to him by his cousin. His cousin's name was Hang Fan, who had said that he had bought these 2 phones cheaply from another electronics store and only sold them to make a profit. He had also anxiously asked his cousin how to turn off the phone's positioning function. It seemed that this man named Hang Fan was highly suspicious of committing the crime. According to the investigation, Hang Fan was 29 years old and addicted to gambling. He had no formal job and normally made a living by illegally driving passengers. After investigating Hang Fan's driving route, on the day Jean Chinku went missing, which was June 8th, the investigators discovered a suspicious point around 3 p.m. That day, Wang Fan's car had entered the area where Jian Chinku was staying at 4:18 p.m. His car had turned into an alley with no surveillance cameras and stayed there for 7 hours. It wasn't until after 11 p.m. that the car came out of the alley. Upon inquiry, the rented apartment of Hang Feisan and his wife in Shenzhen was not in this alley. So what had he come here to do? It turned out that Hang Fan had rented another room in this alley. It was a room with a rolling door where a car could drive straight in. According to Hang Fan, he rented this room for gambling. That day, he had been gambling there for 7 hours, but the surveillance cameras that day didn't record anyone else entering the alley with him. It was the same when he left. When asked specifically about the people who had gambled with him, he couldn't say clearly and only said they were workers from a nearby construction site. But when the investigators interviewed the workers, they all said they didn't know him. Coincidentally, on June 9th, the 2nd day after Jean Chinku went missing, he had driven back to his hometown in Shan. This man named Hang Feisan had an action route quite consistent with the victims. Appeared at the place where the body was found after the incident occurred, and he had the victims' 2 mobile phones. All of these seemed to be telling the investigators the real killer was right in front of them. However, Hang Fan not only denied that he had ever driven Gan Chinku to the rented apartment, but regarding the 2 phones, he also insisted he had bought them cheaply from an electronics store on the afternoon of June 9th. Although the investigators had gathered many clues related to Hang Fan's involvement in the case, these were still not enough to convict him. If Wang Fan stubbornly refused to confess, the police would not be able to do anything to him to gather more evidence. The investigators immediately went to Hang Fan's rented apartment to search in this room that looked quite clean. The police obtained shocking results on the rolling door wall, crevices or floor cracks. They found many small bloodstains. After testing, all these bloodstains belonged to Jian Chinku. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Wang Feixiong finally admitted his crime and revealed the entire process of his criminal act. Due to his gambling addiction, Wang Fan had accumulated significant debt. Additionally, his wife had just given birth at the beginning of the year, so he was under enormous financial pressure. As a result, Wang Fan conceived the idea of kidnapping and robbery. The ideal targets were identified as his passengers. Therefore, he prepared rope and a knife hidden in his car. He also rented an additional apartment to serve as a crime scene on the day of the incident, the afternoon of June 8th, after 2 p.m. Wang Fan drove to the area where Jean Chinku was living to look for passengers. By chance, he encountered Jean Chinku, who was preparing to go out for an art photo shoot. After negotiating, They agreed on a price of $80, Yuan equivalent to about $12. Once in the car due to the hot weather and the broken air conditioning. An argument broke out. John Chinku complained, "This lousy car and you still want to charge about $12. She then continued to berate Hang Fan. These words provoked Hang Fan. As a result, he decided to carry out his long-harbored plan of kidnapping and robbery against Jean Chinku. Hang Fan drove to a secluded place, used a knife to subdue Jean Chinku, and tied her up with rope. Then he took her to the rented apartment first. He sexually assaulted Jean Chinku, then robbed her of her watch, 2 mobile phones, and 6 bank cards while forcing her to reveal the passwords throughout this process. John Chinku repeatedly begged him to let her go, but Hang Fan showed no mercy. Finally, he not only murdered her, but also dismembered her body next. He put the headless body into a suitcase to prevent the suitcase from floating. He welded an iron cage around it, added chains and locks to ensure no one could open it. The victim's head was placed in a concrete block prepared to be thrown into the sea along with the suitcase. After completing all of this the next day, he drove the suitcase and concrete block back to his hometown in Shawan to dispose of them. But what he didn't expect was that after throwing the suitcase into the water, it didn't sink. Therefore, he intended to get some rocks to put in the iron cage to increase the weight. But in an instant, the suitcase had drifted away. He felt very frightened, so he didn't dare to throw the concrete block and drove back to Shenzhen immediately until he was arrested. The concrete block containing the victim's head was still in the apartment he rented. This strange case was finally solved, thanks to the relentless efforts of the task force. On December 22, 2015, the Intermediate People's Court of Shenzhen City, Guangdong Province, announced the verdict. Wang Fashan was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve, deprived of political rights for life, and had all his personal property confiscated. The reason he was given a death sentence with reprieve was that after being arrested, Wang Fan had actively compensated the victim's family, so he received leniency from them. However, Jean Chinu's family disagreed with this verdict. They argued that although the court had organized 3 reconciliation sessions, due to their lack of understanding of Mandarin, along with their confused state of mind at the time and the content of the reconciliation report, not truly reflecting their wishes they had vaguely signed in that situation. Initially, they had also considered that Hang Fashion grew up in a single-parent family, was raised by his grandparents from a young age, and when he committed the crime, his daughter was less than 6 months old. Therefore, they had hesitated whether to forgive him or not. However, they didn't perceive any sincere apology from Hang Fan's family. Therefore, they felt dissatisfied with the final verdict. The tragic case of Jean Chinku has concluded, but it serves as a wake-up call for all of us in our daily lives. We often fall into a state of complacency, thinking that such tragedies will never happen to us. However, reality has proven that danger always lurks around us, and we need to always maintain vigilance to protect the safety of ourselves and our loved ones. The next case we will examine not only shocked the public due to the brutality of the perpetrators, but also because of a strange, unprecedented phenomenon. The killers, after committing their crimes, became wild popular figures on social media, what made them not only escape condemnation, but also attract thousands of fans. Let's dive into the details to find out what really happened. This case took place in Konan Province, located in northeastern Thailand, in 2017 in the Khao Swan Quang district of Kon Kae. There was a newlywed couple. The wife, Warisara Kanui, 32 years old, was young, beautiful, and friendly. Her husband, Sakshi Baiting D, 38 years old, was a talented and wealthy construction contractor. After their marriage, the couple enjoyed a very happy time together. Although the husband often had to travel for work, he would always spend a lot of time with his wife. When he returned, their relationship was sweet, and they were seen as an admirable model couple. However, in the spring of 2017, a sudden tragedy struck their family. Let's go back to May 25, 2017, a Thursday morning in a forest in the Khao Swan Quang district. A farmer was diligently picking mushrooms. He ran an eco-tourism farm and wanted to prepare a specialty dish for guests renting his cabins. Mushrooms typically grow under low shrubs and in damp, shady patches of dry grass. At that time, the farmer was carefully searching for mushrooms in the forest. While searching, he suddenly spotted 3 large metal sheets on a pile of dry grass. In the distance, based on his prior experience, he knew the damp environment under the sheets would be perfect for mushrooms to grow, so he decided to check it out. As he approached, a strong, foul odor filled the air. He tried to hold his breath and endure the stench, then slowly lifted the metal sheet with his hands beneath it. Was a shallow pit. Inside the pit were 2 plastic containers from which the putrid smell was continuously emanating. Out of curiosity, he pulled out a black plastic bag from one of the containers to see what was inside. When he opened the bag, he was shocked and horrified to find dismembered human remains. Terrified, he stumbled back, ran some distance away, and immediately called the police. When the police received the report, they arrived at the scene promptly and cordoned off the entire area at the scene. They examined and retrieved 2 dismembered bodies from the plastic containers. Forensic examination later confirmed that the body parts belonged to a woman. The victim had been sawed in half at the waist. Her arms were severed and her internal organs were missing. There were signs of a struggle, but no sexual assault. There was a deep ligature mark on her neck, and the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The estimated time of death was between May 23rd and 24th of 2017. Although the body had started to decompose significantly, it was still recognizable as that of a beautiful woman with a slender figure. The police took the victim's fingerprints and used the distinctive butterfly tattoo on her body to cross-check recent missing persons reports. That evening, the police were finally able to identify the woman through the missing persons list. She was Warisara Kingi, a 32-year-old bar hostess. Just a day earlier, her mother had reported her missing. It was revealed that Sarah had been married just 3 months before the crime occurred. Her marriage had been peaceful and happy. She was known to be friendly and got along well with others without having made any known enemies. However, as the police dug deeper into the case, they uncovered some surprising details on the surface. Where Asara worked as a bar hostess, where she used suggestive language to encourage customers to spend money. However, her job also involved prostitution. In her line of work, she had physical contact with clients and sometimes engaged in sexual transactions. She had her own group of clients and was involved with various men and women. Even after getting married, she did not remain faithful to her husband. She continued a same-sex relationship with a woman whose identity was not disclosed, but I'll refer to her as Suda. The police then identified 2 main suspects in the case. The first suspect was Sakchai, Sarah's husband. The police speculated that he discovered his wife's infidelity and in a fit of rage murdered her. The second suspect was Suda, Sarah's lover. They believed that Suda might have been upset that her partner had gotten married and could have been responsible for the crime. The police quickly began investigating both individuals during this time. The media sensationalized the case, labeling it a lesbian love triangle and widely publicizing it, which garnered significant attention across Thailand. Suda was the first to be interrogated by the police. She stated, "I hadn't been able to reach Warisara since the night of May 22, 2017. On May 24th, 2017, I even called Warisara's mother to ask about her, but her mother told me that Warisara's husband had been away on a work trip since May 20th, 2017, and Rasara didn't go with him after learning this. I suspected that Rasara was missing and asked her mother to file a report with the police." Throughout the interrogation, Suda was very cooperative and provided a solid alibi. As a result, she was quickly removed from the list of suspects. Suda suggested that Sakai, whereas Sarah's husband was the primary suspect, she believed that he might have discovered his wife's infidelity, then falsely claimed to be on a business trip to mislead everyone. In reality, she thought he hadn't left at all after killing his wife. He then traveled to his work location to create an alibi upon hearing that his wife had been murdered. Sakai immediately returned home. He told the police, "I left home for a business trip on May 20th, 2017, and only rushed back after learning about what happened to my wife." He also mentioned that he only found out about his wife's infidelity. After reading the news, he was shocked to learn that she had been unfaithful and claimed he had no prior knowledge of her same-sex relationship. The police quickly reviewed surveillance footage from Sakchai's workplace. The footage showed that from May 20th, 2017 until May 25th, 2017, when his wife's body was discovered, he was indeed at the construction site. Supervising the work, his co-workers also confirmed this. After investigating all angles, the police deemed Sakai's alibi credible and ultimately ruled him out as a suspect. At this point, the media's theory of a lesbian love triangle murder was completely debunked, and the case reached a deadlock. The police continued searching for other leads. After some time, they made a new discovery. The last time the victim was seen alive was on the afternoon of May 23, 2017, while she was working at the bar, according to surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store and ATM that evening, whereas Sarah used the ATM and then got into a car with a man before leaving. Fortunately, the surveillance cameras captured the man's face and the license plate of the car. He was driving through facial recognition. The ident of the man was confirmed as Wang Na, a 22-year-old who was married and worked at the same bar as the victim. The car's license plate revealed it was a temporary rental and they were heading toward the border. At this point, the police determined that Wang was closely involved in the case, and he was added to the list of main suspects with a nationwide arrest warrant issued for him on May 27, 2017. Wang and his wife Jitter Promine, 21 years old, were arrested in Jat's handbag. The police found Wia Sarah's phone, which they were preparing to sell. Wang admitted to being involved in the crime, but claimed my wife wasn't involved. She was only responsible for disposing of the victim's personal belongings. The real perpetrators were someone else. He stated that the killers were 3 other women who also worked at the bar. Pruk strangled Warisara with a plastic bag while the other 2 held down her arms and legs until she stopped moving. Once they confirmed whereas Sarah was dead, they didn't show any signs of remorse or fear, but instead calmly discussed how to dispose of the body. They then purchased saw plastic containers, black garbage bags, and 3 large metal sheets. Wang drove them to a nearby ecotourism farm and rented a room there. They dismembered Wee's. Sarah's body, wrapped the remains in garbage bags and placed them in 2 plastic containers. Afterward, they drove into a remote forest, hastily dug a shallow hole, tossed in the containers, and covered them with the metal sheets. Once the deed was done, the 4 conspirators planned their escape. Wang took his wife to LA and instructed her to destroy Wia Sarah's phone and other personal items when the opportunity arose. Meanwhile, the other 3 women drove for 11 hours, fleeing to Myanmar after Wang confessed the police sealed off the border-restricting movement and issued a nationwide manhunt for the 3 women. The police also contacted Myanmar authorities to request their assistance in the investigation in the days that followed. The case dominated the headlines of major media outlets and Priya Yank. The mastermind became a notorious figure across Thailand. She was given the nickname Sweet Killer. Despite the nationwide manhunt and their faces being plastered all over social media, the 3 women showed no concern for staying hidden. Instead of going into hiding, they took selfies and flaunted their carefree lifestyle on social media. This bold behavior was seen by Neens as a taunt to the police. Priya's confident demeanor in her photos attracted a large fan base online. Over time, public perception of the 3 female killers became sharply divided. Many young people began idolizing Priya Yank, now famously known as the Sweet Killer clothes. Similar to those she wore, became bestsellers, and she was iconed by the younger generation. Everything about her quickly became a major fashion trend. However, others argued that the case had a deeply negative impact on society and that the criminals should be harshly punished. As a deterrent, in an interview with the media, Priya Yen's sister expressed her hope that her sister would soon turn herself into the police. She also reassured Priya Yank that no matter how dire the situation became, the family would always be there to support her. A week after the crime occurred, through the coordinated efforts of Thai and Myanmar police, the whereabouts of the 3 female killers were uncovered. They were in Tachi Lake, a border town in southeastern Myanmar. Surveillance footage from a clothing store in the small town captured clear images of them. They didn't hide their appearances, walking openly in public and strolling around calmly. Upon receiving this information, the police quickly arrived at the designated area and prepared for a thorough search. Realizing they had no way to escape, the 3 women voluntarily surrendered to the authorities. Priya Yank, The main mastermind confessed that they had arrived in Tachi Lake before the border was sealed. Thanks to their striking appearances, they were able to find jobs at a local bar. However, as the police expanded their search, they were forced to leave the bar and retreat to a small town to hide. After some discussion, they agreed that continuing to hide was futile and that surrendering could reduce their sentences. After coming forward, they went to the local police station to turn themselves in. Their dramatic appearance attracted a lot of attention, and they were swiftly extradited back to Thailand. What stood out was that on their way to the detention center in Thailand, they were not handcuffed. Surrounded by several officers, they were laughing and chatting cheerfully throughout the journey. They showed no signs of remorse or fear, unlike most criminals being escorted. On the contrary, they seemed to enjoy the attention they were getting. They suddenly became social media sensations. Local police treated them with notable friendliness, even offering them snacks and drinks. Some people even asked to take photos with them. According to witnesses, the scene resembled more of a meet and greet between idols and fans than an arrest. While in custody, they were treated like celebrities. They were allowed to use their cell phones, apply facial masks, and chat with the guards before attending a police press conference. They were seen smoking and applying makeup in the detention center. The special treatment they received from the police sparked a wave of outrage online. Many people were outraged at how murderers could be treated so well, whereas Sarah's mother also expressed her anger. "I cannot accept that the people who killed my daughter are being treated so well." In response to the public outrage, the police explained that until convicted, they were still considered suspects, and the police were simply protecting their legal rights as citizens to quell the growing anger. 2 officers who took photos with Prak and posted them online were reassigned at the press conference. The 3 culprits recounted the entire crime, although the details mirrored Wasim testimony. It had a much stronger impact when heard directly from the perpetrators. Hot keywords like newlyweds, bar hostess, dismemberment, prostitution, infidelity, lesbian, love triangle, sweet killer, and facial mask were trending. At the time, the combination of these terms in a single case caused the story's popularity to skyrocket. The handbag carried by the 3 female killers when they were arrested became a trendy fashion item. Highly sought after, the saw used to dismember the victim was even turned into a keychain design and sold in various shops. However, over time, public interest in the case began to wane more unexpectedly. On December 3, 2017, 8 months after the crime occurred, the trial began at the Conan Provincial Court. At this point, Pronak Kida, Ayan, and Wasim were charged with murder and other crimes. Meanwhile, Jidat Wasim's wife was only charged with theft. According to Thai criminal law, the maximum penalty for murder is the death sentence at the trial. Whereas Sarah's mother brought a photo of her daughter to the courthouse, lit incense, prayed, and hoped the criminals would be severely punished by the law per court regulations. Mobile phones were not allowed inside. However, during the trial, a post appeared on Facebook featuring a screenshot of a conversation with Pronak. In the chat, she expressed, "I'm in court and thankful that you haven't shunned me. Even though you know I'm a suspect." The post even included a photo of Pronak and the 2 other suspects making heart shapes with their hands and taking selfies right inside the courtroom. The indifference and fearlessness of the 3 female criminals sharply contrasted with the anger and grief of the victim's family. Outside the courthouse, their blatant disregard for the court once again caused a storm on social media. Many were outraged, condemning their arrogance and expressing concern about the Thai justice system. Even more surprising, the shameless behavior of 3 female killers in court sent Prey and AKA's fans into a frenzy. They saw this as a symbol of rebellion, with some even claiming that the 3 girls were innocent. In court, the prosecutor stated that the defendants had deliberately murdered the victim, showed blatant disregard for the justice system, and should be severely punished by law. The defense attorney argued that they initially didn't intend to kill the victim, only to teach her a lesson. However, the victim allegedly threatened them, leading them to lose control in a fit of rage. Additionally, the defense emphasized that the suspects had turned themselves in, showing remorse and thus deserved leniency in her testimony. Prey and Act said, "We didn't intend to kill the victim. Initially, I felt guilty for my actions and haven't been able to sleep well at night. I'm willing to accept any sentence to ease my guilt." The judge acknowledged that the three culprits had committed a horrific crime by brutally murdering the victim and should have been sentenced to life in prison. However, considering that they had confessed and cooperated with the police investigation, their sentences were reduced accordingly. The court sentenced Pronak and Quia to 34 years and 6 months in prison. Appin received a sentence of 33 years and 9 months, and Wyson was sentenced to 23 years for months and 20 days. Jidat was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Additionally, the four killers were ordered to compensate Ware's family with 1 million baht and 100,000 baht for funeral expenses, totaling 1.1 million baht, which is approximately $32,500 at the current exchange rate. The case was finally closed, but its impact on society remained strong. Many of Pran's Deard fans expressed their opposition to the verdict, claiming the sentences were unfair and demanding the court reduce them. Some people, however, were deeply concerned about this social phenomenon. Psychologists began analyzing why Pran Act garnered so much support. They suggested that her alluring appearance, combined with being charged with murder and the dramatic nature of the case, contributed to her popularity. The lavish and glamorous lifestyle she flaunted on social media. Meta became a focal point of attention. When the public is faced with almost unbelievable truths, their instinct is to dig deeper and learn more about the stories behind the people involved. Sensational news spreading across social media satisfies the curiosity of many. In an interview with the media, Pran AKA's sister tearfully lamented, "As soon as the case broke, the media portrayed my sister as a cruel, evil woman who deserved punishment. Even our friends and family were viciously attacked and criticized. It wasn't until the trial verdict that it was proven my sister didn't commit a premeditated crime. I hope the public won't judge or attack others based on one-sided stories, but instead give Pronak a chance to make amends." However, while the criminals may still have a chance to turn their lives around for Warisara, the young woman brutally murdered. Her life was tragically cut short at just 32 years old. Story 3 on April 29, 2008. A mother and daughter surnamed Wang arrived at the New Territories police station with worried expressions to report a missing person. Mrs. Wang stated that her 16-year-old daughter, Wang Jie, had been missing for 3 days. Initially, the family thought she might be staying at a friend's house, but they had been unable to contact her. The older sister of Bing, who accompanied her mother, added at 11 p.m. On April 26th, my sister and I were still chatting happily at home. Afterward, we each went to our rooms to rest, and nothing unusual happened. But the next morning, I couldn't find my sister anywhere. I don't know when she left the house or where she went. The family reported that Wang Jie had once stayed overnight at her boyfriend's house, but after breaking up, she rarely spent nights away from home. Even when she occasionally came home late, she would always inform the family in advance. There had never been a case of her disappearing for several consecutive days like this. After completing the report at the police station, the mother and daughter returned home. Such disappearances were not uncommon, especially among teenagers of this age. The police officially recorded the case as a missing person and assigned the New Territories Missing Persons Investigation Unit to follow up the missing person. Wang Jie was from Sheno, Hunan. She was the second child in the family and had an older sister, a Bing, who was 3 years her senior. Both sisters carried their mother's surname. When Wang Jie was 3 years old, her parents divorced due to conflicts later. Her mother remarried a 50-year-old man from Hong Kong named Chin. This stepfather was a lazy man without a job, apart from having Hong Kong citizenship. Wang Ji felt he had nothing worthy of her mother's respect. In 2000, Wang Ji's mother decided to take the older sister of Bing to settle in Hong Kong. Leaving the young girl alone in her hometown, there were conflicting reports about Wang Ji's living situation. At that time, some said she remained in her hometown of Sheno, while others claimed she was sent to Dingan to be cared for by others. Regardless of the actual circumstances, it was clear that Wang Jie had experienced a very lonely childhood lacking in affection. In 2005, at the age of 14, she was finally brought to Hong Kong to reunite with her mother and sister, as well as the stepfather. She barely knew the family's financial situation was not good. and her mother had to make a living as a trash collector when she first arrived in Hong Kong. Wang Jie was overjoyed to see the bustling city. Her mother enrolled her at Sam Yu Tai Secondary School, where her sister, a Bing, was also studying. Wang Jie was an excellent student in 8th grade. She won the Purple Gold Award, a prize given to students who excel in at least one of 3 subjects: math, Chinese, and English. She also won awards in Mandarin and English recitation competitions and received school scholarships for 2 consecutive years. However, Wang Jie's relationships with her classmates and teachers were not good. Her peers saw her as introverted, stubborn, and quiet outside of school. Her relationship with her stepfather was also poor. They frequently argued. In 2007, Wang Jie enrolled in a modeling course outside of school. However, due to her ordinary appearance and figure, she received almost no photo shoot invitations. She lied to her family, claiming she was working as a model's assistant and earning about 20,000 Hong Kong dollars to 30,000 Hong Kong, approximately 2,560 Hong Kong dollars to 3,840 Hong Kong dollars per month. However, she quit the job shortly after. Wang Jie enjoyed beauty and fashion. She liked makeup and beautiful clothes, often sharing clothes and shoes with her sister. The 2 sisters even enrolled in a makeup course together, attending 3 classes per week in January 2008, perhaps wanting to help ease the family's financial burden. Wang Jie, then in 10th grade, told her family she wanted to drop out of school. Despite her mother and sister's strong objections, she insisted on her decision, believing that too much education was useless. Eventually, Wang Jie left school. From then on, she began leading a dissipated life, frequently visiting entertainment venues, associating with all kinds of people, and even staying out overnight without returning home. After receiving the missing person report, the police went to Wang Jie's apartment in Taiwan Taipo to investigate. This was a public housing complex provided by the Hong Kong government for low-income residents and was home to many new immigrants. Wang Jie lived in an apartment in the Kwa building. The police checked the browsing history on the computer in Wang Jie's bedroom and discovered that she was working as a prostitute. She had registered an account on an adult forum, posting many suggestive photos and publicly listing her service prices. She also used 2 ICQ accounts to communicate with clients. On April 13th, Wang Jie had posted on the forum and gone out to meet a client late at night. Over a week later, someone left a comment reviewing her services. Sometimes she also provided accompanying services such as shopping or going for walks with clients. Meeting strangers always carries potential risks, and no one could guarantee Wang Jie's safety based on her social connections. The police determined that she might be in danger after several days of her disappearance. Wang Jie's family was completely unaware of her work as a prostitute. Her sister, a Bing, told the police, "We sisters were very close and often confided in each other." However, at some point, Wang Jie's mood began to darken, as if she was hiding something troubling. Gradually, Eng noticed that her sister had made many new friends outside of school. Ranging in age from 20 to 50, Wang Jie often talked on the phone with others at night, sometimes staying out overnight when the family inquired. She only said she was dating a boyfriend but never brought him home. Eng knew that Wang Jie often used ICU to chat with people, but she couldn't believe her sister would do such things normally. Wang Jie only browsed beauty websites and occasionally went to sing karaoke after investigating Wang Jie's relationships. The police became increasingly concerned for her safety. The case was quickly publicized in the media to seek clues from potential witnesses. On May 2nd, a man named Aing came to the police station and reported that he had met Wang Jie. Aing was a programmer and could be considered a regular client of Wang Jie. In April 2008, a Bing had seen Wang Jie's information on the forum and arranged to meet her on April 20th. He had paid 1,500 Hong Kong dollars, approximately $192 for that encounter. After that meeting, the two became closer and often chatted online. A few days later, a Bing wanted to meet Wang Jie again and called her in the early morning of April 27th. They met at Sham Shou P subway station that evening. Wang Jie wore a black outfit and carried a yellow bag. They then went to a nearby hotel when they entered the room. Wang Jie seemed tired, so a Bing didn't engage in any sexual activity with her. The two lay on the bed talking and fell asleep without realizing it. Around 9 a.m. the next morning, they left the hotel and said goodbye. This time, Ng paid Wang Jim 2,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately $256, and arranged to meet her again in the future. Ng said that after that day, he couldn't contact Wang Jie through ICQ or phone calls. It wasn't until May 2nd, when he saw the news about Wang Jie's disappearance, that he realized something was wrong and immediately went to the police station to provide information. The day Wang Jie disappeared was the same day she left the hotel with a Bing, and a Bing was also the last person known to have seen Wang Jie. Therefore, Ng naturally became the primary suspect in the case. However, after investigation, the police confirmed a Bing's statement was true and cleared him of suspicion, according to a Bing that night in the hotel room. Wang Jam had confided in him that she wanted to earn money to give her mother a better life. Wang Jie had been scammed by a modeling company, not only failing to earn money, but also owing the company 50,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately 6,400. She had managed to pay back over 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. But on the evening of April the 26th, the modeling company called, again demanding she pay an additional 10,000 Hong Kong dollars in interest before May. If she didn't pay, they threatened to expose her work for the company and release sensitive videos of her online backed into a corner. Wang Jie was forced to see multiple clients to earn money to pay off the debt. The police speculated that after parting with a Bing, Wang Jie had gone to meet another client who might be connected to her disappearance by checking W. Jim's call logs. The police discovered that her last call was made at 1:04 p.m. on April 27th at Sham Show P subway station. The call lasted 53 seconds. The number on the other end was an unregistered prepaid phone. According to Wang Jie's ICQ chat history at 9:16 a.m. on April 27th, someone had arranged to meet her at Sham Show P subway station at 1 p.m. that day. This person had instructed Wang Jie to call when she arrived, and they would then come to the subway station to pick her up. The phone number this person left matched the number Wang Jie had called last through the IP address. The police determined that this person's ICQ messages were sent from a computer in the Yen Fat building on Sheikh Kip Street, not far from Sham Show P subway station. A week later, on May 6th, a 30-year-old man named Ade came to the police station to report. Looking panic-stricken, Ade stated that Wang Jie might have been killed by his friend 24-year-old Ding Chi Tai. Ade and Ding Chi Tai had known each other and become close friends 15 years earlier when they both worked at a late-night Eerie. Although they no longer worked together, the two still kept in regular contact. Ade said that on the evening of April 26th, he and Ding Chai had gone out to a bar in Sim Sha Sui. Ding Chai not only drank alcohol but also used drugs. The two stayed at the bar until 7 a.m. the next morning before leaving from 9:25 p.m. to 11:25 p.m. On April 27th, Ade received 3 consecutive calls from Ding Chi Tai on the phone. Ding Chi Tai said he had killed a girl. Ding Chi Tai recounted that while having sex with the girl, she kept saying she wanted to die for some unknown reason. He strangled her to death. He then dismembered the body to dispose of it. Ding Chai also described that the girl's body had a lot of fat and he didn't want to see her face, so he skinned her face and threw it away. He hid the victim's bones in a pig bone container at a pork stall. Ding Chi Tai's called terrify Ade. However, he still couldn't believe his friend had killed someone. Thinking that Ding Chai was just talking nonsense after using drugs, the two met a few more times after that, and Ding Chai insisted that what he had said on the phone was just a joke. However, in recent days, Ade had been haunted by this incident. Later, when he saw the news about Wang Jam's disappearance, Ade noticed that the victim's description and the time of disappearance closely matched what Ding Chi Tai had said on the phone. Ade began to suspect and decided to report to the police. Based on Ade's statement, the police determined that Wang Jam's disappearance was not simple. The case was then transferred to the Cowan West Regional Crime Unit for further investigation. According to the investigation, Ding Chai's home address matched the IP address that the police had traced from the ICQ messages. Earlier that evening, the crime unit St. Ked, out near the Yen Fat building where Ding Chi Ta lived, around 11 p.m. Ding Chi Ta appeared in the darkness. The police immediately rushed in. subdued him, and took him to the police station during interrogation. Ding Chi Tha implicated an accomplice, his friend named Hui, claiming this person had helped him dispose of the body. The police quickly apprehended Hui as well. The police searched Ding Chai's apartment in the Yenfat building in the bathroom on the floor. Walls, door frames, and shower curtain, there were still bloodstains that hadn't been cleaned. Traces of blood were also found on the computer desk chair and carpet in the bedroom. Even a CD in the disk drive was stained with blood. DNA test results showed that all that belonged to Wang Jiamei clearly. This apartment was the scene of the murder. During interrogation, Ding Chi Tai confessed to killing Wang Ji and dumping her body into the sea near the Cowan Ferry Pier around 8 a.m. The next day, a group of police officers escorted Ding Chi Tai to the coastal area of the Cowan Ferry Pier, where he had disposed of the body by 3:00 p.m. Divers had made 2 attempts to search the seabed but found nothing. At this point, Ding Chai revealed that he had dismembered Wang James' body, only throwing the head into the sea. He had cut the other body parts into small pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Some bone fragments were taken to a pork stall in Shi Kip Mei and mixed with pig meat. The murder's confession shocked the police since the incident had occurred over 10 days ago. Some bone fragments might have already been sold to customers when the case was made public. It sent shockwaves through society. The information that Ding Chi Tai had disposed of human remains at a pork stall caused great panic among local residents. Rumors spread online that Wang Jiamei had gone to the Yenfat building on the day of the incident to participate in a group sex party with Ding Chi Tai and others due to Wang James' habit of using drugs before working. She had allegedly died from a drug overdose to avoid punishment. Ding Chi Tai and Hui had allegedly dismembered the victim and disposed of the remains in the sea and at the pork stall. However, after investigation, the police confirmed this information was inaccurate at the time of the incident. We had a reliable alibi. He was not involved in the case and did not help. Ding Chi Tha disposed of the body as Ding Chi Tai had initially claimed. After further investigation, the police were able to piece together the sequence of events early that morning after leaving the bar at 7 a.m. Ding Chet Tai continued to use drugs when he got home. He still felt high and couldn't calm down in his drug-induced state. Ding Chi Tha contacted Wang Jiam after 1 p.m. They met. Ding Chai took Wang Jiam back to his apartment. They both used drugs and then had sex around 3 p.m. Ding Chai woke up. He was shocked to find Wang Jiamei lying motionless on the bed with bloody foam at her mouth and her body already cold. Ding Chi Tha realized he had killed someone but couldn't remember the exact details. He only recalled that he had strangled the victim for about 1 to 2 minutes. Initially, Ding Chi Tha was terrified when faced with Wang Jiamei's death, but within 5 to 10 minutes, a plan to dismember and dispose of the body flashed through his mind. Ding Chi Tha chose to dismember the body, thinking it would be harder to detect. It took him 6 hours to dismember Wang James' body. Just draining the blood took 10 to 15 minutes. During the process of handling the body, he found it difficult to skin and remove the flesh simultaneously, so he came up with the idea of skinning first, then removing the flesh, similar to how pigs are butchered to avoid clogging the toilet. He cut the body into small pieces and flushed them down in multiple batches. When dealing with fingers and toes, he flushed the toilet after disposing of each one to ensure they were completely gone at 10 p.m. Ding Chi Tai began processing the bones that couldn't be flushed down the toilet, such as arm bones, leg bones, and the spine. He decided to remove all the flesh, making them less recognizable as human bones to easily mix with pork. Later, he then took the victim's head on a bus to the Cowan Ferry Pier and threw it into the sea. Apart from the head disposed of in the sea, Ding Chi Tha divided the remaining 10 parts of the body into 2 portions and dumped them at a pork stall on Sheikh Kip Mei Street. Before his arrest, Ding Chi Tai continued his normal life, eating and enjoying himself. During this time, he called Ad several times, which ultimately helped the police track him down. The police asked Ding Chai if he had ever worked in jobs related to anatomy or selling pork before, and if he had taken photos of the dismemberment process. He denied all of these. Every action of Ding Chi Tai was carefully calculated. Even the reason for taking the victim's head on a bus to dispose of it, then taking another bus home, had its purpose. He believed that traveling by bus would be less likely to attract police attention, thus minimizing the risk. After Ding Chai's arrest, psychiatrist from Castle Peak Hospital came to examine him. Ding Chi revealed that he had been treated for mental illness. At age 8, started purchasing sex services at 15 to 6, began using drugs in late 2001, and started viewing pornographic websites in 2002. Some experts pointed out that if Ding Chai's statement was true, he might have suffered from aeon automatism caused by drug use. Automatism is a special form of epilepsy characterized by simple or complex unintentional unconscious actions occurring during or after a seizure when the patient is in a dazed state and has no memory of these actions. However, according to the director of the hospital Substance Abuse Treatment Center, there is no medical literature documenting cases of drug abuse causing automatism. Ding Chi's claim of not remembering the killing process could be a lie. During the dismemberment, small body parts were flushed down the toilet multiple times. Wastewater from the building flowed through a pumping station and several septic tanks before being transferred to the now Tom May sewage treatment plant. This plant processes millions of cubic meters of wastewater daily for the port area and 2 coastlines. The treated wastewater is then discharged into the sea. These facilities operate 24/7. Finding body parts in this complex sewage system was nearly impossible. However, some residents living near the crime scene reported smelling a foul odor, similar to dead rats coming from the drainage of a real estate company and a jean store. On the ground floor of the building, upon receiving the report, the police contacted the drainage company to coordinate the investigation on May 8th. Drainage company staff began searching for body parts in the sewer system and several manholes near the crime scene when tapping on a drainage pipe. They detected an unusual sound and suspected there might be an obstruction inside from the sludge. Dredged up from the manhole, they found over 20 pieces of flesh, suspected to be human DNA test results. Later confirmed that these flesh pieces belonged to Wang Na. As for the victim's head, although the police had expanded their search area under the sea near the Cowan Ferry Pier, they still found nothing. Ding Chi, 24 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 209 pounds, was born in Hong Kong and was the second child in a family of siblings. Ding Chi was a rebellious child, often causing trouble and getting into fights at age 5. During a family trip to mainland China, Ding Chi was involved in a serious traffic accident. The accident caused him to suffer a brain injury and witness his mother's death. After the accident, his maternal relatives blamed Ding Chi's father for causing his mother's death. 2 years later, Ding Chi's father remarried. The family moved to Nansen Village and lived quite harmoniously at age 8. Due to his hot temper and learning difficulties, Ding Chi was taken by his family to the hospital for a psychological evaluation after being diagnosed with an emotional disorder. Ding Chi was sent to a special school for children with disabilities. At 15 to 16 years old, he was sent to a reform school for psychological counseling. Due to assaulting others, Ding Chi dropped out of school in 6th grade. Afterward, he worked as a delivery person for a nightclub and also apprenticed an air conditioning installation with a cousin at a construction site. Attracted by the glittering world outside, Ding Chi gradually fell into bad habits. He abused drugs to the point of vomiting and nosebeds, but still craved the excitement these substances brought. Ding Chi plunged into a life of debauchery. Even when he had a girlfriend, he still frequented prostitutes, according to the nightclub owner where Ding Chi once worked. His monthly income at that time was over 4,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately $512. He only worked for half a year before quitting with his bleached blonde hair and chubby figure. People called him Fat Tai Ding Chi. Tai often boasted about his encounters with prostitutes. He also got into arguments with others over money. His behavior was no different from that of a thug. Some former colleagues said Ding Chi was a bragger, lazy, and only interested in pleasure. He spent money like water and then turned to borrowing from friends. Ding Chi always wanted to make quick money. He once borrowed 60,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately 7,680 from a finance company, and spent it all in a short time. He then borrowed another 200,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately 25,600, from the same company, unable to repay the debt. Ding Chai was visited by debt collectors at his home. Finally, he was forced to move to avoid the debt in the eyes of AD. His close friend Ding Chai was clever but had a hot temper, was easily irritated and frequently cursed in June 2007. When Ding Chi Tha was 23 years old, he rented an apartment on the second floor of the Yen Fat building on Sheik Keep May Street for 2,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately $256 per month. Later, this apartment became the scene of the horrific crime. A year after the incident in July 2009, the trial for the case opened at the Hong Kong High Court. Defendant Ding Chai was charged with murder and preventing the lawful burial of a corpse. At the trial, Ding Chai admitted to his crimes. After 6 days of trial, the court delivered its verdict. Ding Chi Thai was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment for preventing the lawful burial of a corpse. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The final sentence was life imprisonment in November of that year. The close friend who had reported Ding Chi Tha's crime and helped the police solve the case was invited to attend the 2009 Outstanding Citizen Award ceremony. When receiving the award, Ad was very emotional. He was the only one receiving an award who didn't feel happy. Ad shared, "My feelings are very complex. Ding Chai really did kill someone. Sometimes I can't sleep." In 2015, the movie Port of Call, based on this case, was released and once again stirred up public discussion. The Wang Na case closed but left Hong Kong residents with a lingering sense of shock and haunting. Her death serves as a warning about the lurking dangers in a prosperous society where neon lights cannot cover all the dark corners. This story highlights the importance of love care and proper education. Each family and each of us has a responsibility to build a safe, healthy environment and a better society. Story 4 will be delving into a case that shocked both China and Singapore. Wang Na, an adorable 8-year-old girl, mysteriously disappeared on the island nation. After her disappearance, thousands of people took part in one of the largest search efforts ever seen. And when the truth was finally revealed, the public was outraged by what the perpetrator had done to express their sorrow. Many people voluntarily attended her funeral, sending her favorite candy as a tribute. However, as the investigation unfolded, a surprising number of people began to sympathize with the perpetrator in a baffling turn of events. So what was the final truth? We'll take you back to Singapore and in 2004 to uncover what really happened. Singapore has long been regarded as an exceptionally clean, civilized country with the highest security standards in the region, but despite its safety, Hang Na, a young Chinese immigrant just 8 years old, suddenly disappeared, causing a media frenzy. Hang Na was born on September 26, 1996, into a modest family in China who worked hard to make ends meet. However, the reality was that Hang Na's family consisted only of her mother, as her father had left them to work illegally in Singapore as a fruit packer before she was born. During his time away, Hang Na's father started an affair with another woman, ultimately leading to a divorce. A few years later, her mother found a new husband, and Hang Na had a younger half-sibling. By the time Hang Na was in the early years of elementary school, Singapore had introduced policies to support immigration in order to attract talent. Not wanting to miss out on the opportunity for a better education for her daughter, Hang Na's mother, Heng Shuing, discussed with her husband and agreed to send Hang Na to Singapore to study. This decision, however, cost the family a significant amount of money and effort. So at just 7 years old, Hang followed her mother's arrangement and moved nearly 3,100 miles away from her hometown in Fuan to Singapore, where she enrolled at Ganai Primary School, one of the most expensive schools in Singapore. At the time, of course, no mother would feel comfortable letting her child live alone in a foreign place. So Hang Na's mother decided to stay with her and occasionally flew back to Fuan to care for her younger child. With her second husband in this new country, Wang Na's mother made a living by opening a produce stall at a market near her daughter's school, and she also rented the space above the stall where the two could rest when needed, as her mother began selling produce. The people in the market and regular customers grew fond of the cheerful 7-year-old, always full of energy, and with a sweet, sweet smile on her face, knowing that her family situation wasn't as fortunate as many of her classmates. Wang Na was exceptionally understanding and well-behaved. She never asked her mother for anything and became a source of emotional support, giving her mother the motivation to keep working when they had free time to spend together. Wang Na would often tell her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll study hard and become a doctor so I can earn lots of money and take care of you. So you won't have to work so hard anymore." But whether it was becoming a doctor or anything else, Wang Na would never have the chance to achieve her dreams on September 27, 2004, after celebrating a cozy birthday with Hang Na. Her mother, Hang Xiang, packed her bags for a trip back to Fuwen to visit her younger child. During this time, Hang Na had to stay behind in Singapore to avoid missing school. Given Hang Na's unique situation with her mother frequently flying between Singapore and Fuwen, it was quite normal for her to take care of her herself. She handled her own meals, bathed at public bathhouses, and even flew alone back home for summer vacations. Everyone who knew the mother and daughter duo admired the independence and maturity of this 8-year-old girl. So when her mother left for this trip, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for the two of them. Before leaving, Wang Na's mother entrusted her daughter's care to a roommate named El Suin and gave her 100 Singapore dollars to manage her own expenses during the 2 short weeks on October 10th. Nearly 2 weeks after her mother had left, Wang Na sweetly told her aunt Li Su Ken that she wanted to call her mom, since this was a common request. Whenever Hang Na missed her mother, her aunt had no concerns about letting her go alone around 1:30 p.m. After informing her aunt, Wang Na quickly went to the nearby payphone to call her mother. She skillfully dialed the number, and as soon as she heard her mother's voice on the other end, she excitedly began sharing everything that had happened in the days since her mother had left. She also mentioned that she needed an electronic English dictionary and a new pair of sandals. Since her current ones were worn out, her mother cheerfully agreed to buy these things for her and promised to bring them when she returned to Singapore. She also advised Hang not to be patient for a few more days, as her work at home wasn't finished and the trip might be extended after a brief 6-minute phone call. Hang Na seemed a little sad as she missed her mother terribly. As for her mother, Hang Shuing, if she had known this would be the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice, she might have talked to her for a little longer. By around 2:30 p.m., an hour had passed and Hang Na still hadn't returned. Lucan began to feel a sense of unease. How could making a phone call take so long? A gut feeling told her something was wrong. She immediately went to the nearby payphone where Hang Na had called her mother, but the little girl was nowhere to be found. A wave of fear slowly began to wash over Luan. Filling her mind with dread, she frantically searched everywhere, scouring the market where Hang Na's mother sold produce and even went to her school. But there was no trace of the girl. Unable to bear the anxiety any longer, Lucan sought help from friends and acquaintances. More than 20 people joined the search, combing through nearby areas, but there was still no sign of her. Exhausted by 10 p.m., Lee and the others finally turned to the police for help and informed Hang Na's mother in Fuan. Immediately, Hang Shuang dropped everything at home and caught the earliest flight back to Singapore to search for her eldest daughter. Once the police took on the case, they didn't waste a second launching an investigation and interviewing those involved. According to reports, the last time Hang Na was seen was when she left home to make the phone call. She was wearing a jacket, blue shorts, and had short dark hair. Additionally, it was confirmed that Hang Na was just an 8-year-old girl with a sweet, cheerful personality. Her mother, since arriving in Singapore, hadn't had any conflicts with anyone, not even minor disagreements. Both mother and daughter were remembered by others as kind, gentle, and friendly, so the police quickly ruled out the possibility of her disappearance being an act of revenge. Furthermore, Singapore is very small, with a total area of only about 270 square miles, and Hang Na was very familiar with the surroundings where she lived, making it highly unlikely that she got lost after eliminating all other possibilities. Only one scenario remained the most dreaded. One, Hang Na had been kidnapped. With the investigation strategy quickly established, the police began focusing on the wholesale market where Hang Na's mother worked. Questioning everyone who was present that day, it wasn't long before they got their first lead on the missing girl. M. Lin, an employee at a cafe in the plaza near the wholesale market, told the police that she had seen Hang Na. That afternoon, the girl was wearing a jacket and blue shorts but wasn't wearing any shoes. Miss Lin said she asked Twang Na why she wasn't wearing weeing shoes, but the girl didn't answer. She just smiled sweetly and skipped away. Several other people in the market also reported seeing Hang. Now, that afternoon, they said she had been with a man they were all familiar with. They agreed he was a young man only in his early 20s who wasn't particularly bright and worked a simple job packing goods. He frequently spent time with Wang Na and was very fond of her, treating her like his little niece. Following these leads from the market vendors, the police quickly found the young man who was identified as Tuk Elha, a worker who packed goods at the market when the police informed him they were questioning him about the disappearance of Hanga on October 10th. Tuk Lo responded with genuine surprise. He admitted that he had seen her that day and even gave her 2 mangoes, telling her not to wander around and to go straight home, given his cooperative and honest demeanor. Showing no signs of deception, the police gradually dismissed their suspicions and allowed him to go home during this time, while the police were actively investigating. Wang Na's mother wasn't sitting idly either. For days after arriving on October 12th, she printed stacks of flyers with her daughter's face on them, handing them to every passerby on the street, constantly asking if anyone had seen or heard about her daughter, but that wasn't all. Wang Shuying didn't allow herself even a moment of rest. She searched construction sites and water pipes, tirelessly walking from dawn until long past midnight every day, never stopping, fueled by the faint hope that she might find her daughter and bring her home during those relentless days of searching. A niece called Hang Shuying and told her about a strange dream she had. Wanga is trapped on a mountain, although it was only a spiritual or symbolic occurrence, and often these things have no real-world significance in her desperate state. Wang Na's mother couldn't dismiss any possibility for many days. Despite being physically and mentally exhausted, Wang Shuang would continue to search for her favorite teddy bear, hiking up the tallest mountains in search of her child. During this period, Wang Shuang was no longer alone in her search. Reporters followed her, but so did strangers. Touched by the story of the mother and daughter who were willing to scour all of Singapore to help. At that point, nearly the entire country was involved in a large-scale search for Wang Na, attracting everyone from business people to retirees, taxi drivers, and many others. One person even offered a reward of 10,000 Singapore dollars for any leads, and another added an additional 5,000 Singapore dollars. Of course, the search teams distributed news photos and flyers about the girl's mysterious disappearance. Far and wide, the search grew so large that even Singapore's neighboring country, Malaysia, got involved. Some Malaysians joined the search, and a few restaurants near the Singapore border hung posters urging people to look for Wang Na. In just a few days, the number of people participating in the search skyrocketed. A total of 70,000 fears were printed and distributed, but despite all efforts, there was no sign of Wang Na. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. At this point, everything seemed to take a sudden turn when the police decided to reinvestigate, examining all leads and individuals involved, including Tuk Lunga, when they brought him in for a second round of questioning. His story changed entirely. Raising the police's suspicions in his second statement, he claimed, "I know where Wang Na is. She was kidnapped by a group of 3 or 4 Chinese men who threatened her." He explained that this was a result of unresolved conflicts that Wang Na's mother had with others at the market, leading to her daughter's abduction as an act of revenge. After providing this information, Tuk Elha even volunteered to help the police by using his connections to contact the group and negotiate Wang Na's release. However, he explained that since he was summoned to the police station too early, he didn't have his phone and needed to return home to retrieve it. Though skeptical, the police agreed and assigned 2 officers to escort him back to his home. After retrieving his phone, they quickly placed him in a car to return to the station for a lie detector test. But at that very moment, something happened that was beyond the police's control. Tuk Lung Hao took advantage of the police's trust. While being escorted, he requested a stop at a restaurant on Pasir Penang Road, claiming he was hungry after pretending to go to the restroom. He slipped away unnoticed. When the police realized he hadn't come out for a long time, they panicked and understood that Tuk Lung Hao had built their trust only to use it as a means for his escape naturally. When a suspect flees during transport, the police must immediately give chase and call for backup to set up a perimeter as quickly as possible. The same happened with Tuk Lunga. However, no matter how many officers they mobilized or how intensively they searched, they couldn't catch him. Tuk Lung Hao seemed to have vanished without a trace. The CIA, the obvious question at this point was where had he gone and why did he run? Before we find out what happened to him, let's take a step back and explore who Tuck Long. How really was Tuck Long? I was born on December 16th of 1981 in Penang, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 children in a financially struggling family. He lived in Malaysia with his family until the age of 8, when he decided to leave home and move to Singapore to seek better job opportunities. However, things didn't go as planned without any qualifications. Tuck Long. How could only find manual labor jobs? After some time in Singapore, he met a Chinese-Indonesian woman, and they quickly got married and had a son together. It was during this time that Wang Na and her mother met Tuck Long when they moved to Singapore. They rented a small room in the same building where Tuck Long lived from then on. Tuck Long and Wang Na became familiar with each other, developing a close bond as if they were uncle and niece. He would often ride his motorcycle to pick Wang Na up, taking her out for fun, buying her small gifts, and treating her to meals at restaurants in Singapore. Because of this, it wasn't just Wang Na who lettered her guard down. Her mother did too. She trusted and liked Tuck Long. When the police informed her that he was the prime suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she couldn't believe her ears. She kept saying, "No, it can't be him," and repeatedly asked the police if there had been a mistake. However, the Singapore police were confident in their suspicions, and after Tuck Long's unexpected escape, their doubts were only further reinforced. Let's take a moment to consider the geography of Singapore at the time of Tuck Long's escape. Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, and by land, the only place he could have fled to was Malaysia, his home country, as soon as Tuck Long's escape was discovered. The Singapore police contacted Malaysian authorities for assistance in tracking him down. The Malaysian police reached out to all of Tuck Long's family members in Malaysia, including his parents and siblings. Tuck Long's father, who was 62 years old at the time, told the police very honestly that he had received a phone call from his second son after his escape. In that brief call, Tuck Long said, "I didn't kidnap Wang Na. I ran away because I couldn't handle the pressure from the police." When the police arrived at their home, even Tuck Long's older brother couldn't believe his brother was the prime suspect in such a horrific crime to him. Tuck Long was a shy person who never even had the nerve to asked for a loan, and he had never been involved in a fight for someone like that. The idea of kidnapping a child sounded like a far-fetched story. As for the Singapore police, they quickly reached out to Tuck Long's wife, who was still living in Singapore. She provided the police with similar information to what his father had told Malaysian authorities. Tuck Long had called her as well, insisting he hadn't kidnapped the girl. However, in his call to his wife, he gave one crucial piece of information after escaping from the police. He had taken a taxi to the border between Singapore and Malaysia, then continued by bus to Johor, Malaysia. Despite his family's hopes that he would explain what was happening, and even with the cooperation between the two neighboring countries, no further progress seemed to be made. That is until October 30th. 10 days after his last interrogation and 20 days after the crime, when he voluntarily turned himself into the police in Penang, Malaysia, after receiving the news from Malaysia that Tuck Long had surrendered and was in custody. Singapore police immediately sent an investigative team to bring him back for further questioning, realizing he had no way out. Tuck Long confessed to everything that had happened on October 31st. A team of over 20 investigators led Tuck Long of the location where he claimed he had disposed of Wang Na's body on a hill in Telok Blangah Hill Park, just about a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where her mother worked. After about 30 minutes of searching the area that Tuck Long had pointed out, officers noticed a foul smell near a withered bush. Upon digging into the shallow soil, they uncovered a cardboard box tightly sealed with tape. Some thick oily liquid was seeping from the edges and corners of the box, but no other signs were found, indicating that this was just the burial site and not the location of the crime. The box was immediately taken to the forensic center for examination. Forensic experts determined that it was a packing box taken from the place where Tuck Long worked. Inside the cardboard box were 9 layers of plastic. After peeling away all the material, they found the severely decomposed and unrecognizable body of a small girl whom we all knew for certain was Wang Na. Following standard procedure, The forensics team conducted a DNA comparison with Wang Na's mother, Hang Shuang, to confirm the identity. The heartbreaking results showed that the body was indeed Hang Na, the little girl they had been searching for all this time. While the forensic team worked on their final report, the police didn't sit idly by during one interrogation. Tuk Lunga gave a statement claiming that Hang Na's death was entirely accidental. He said they had been playing hide-and-seek in the warehouse, but instead of a regular game, he tied her hands and feet before hiding. Tuk Lo explained, "I just wanted to make the game more fun by having her untie herself before she could come find me." However, the physical evidence told a different story. The forensic doctor spoke on behalf of the victim. Their report showed that the direct cause of Hang Na's death was acute airway obstruction. The problem, however, was that since Hang Na had been attacked so long ago and her body was wrapped in 9 layers of plastic bags, it was impossible to determine exactly when the suffocation occurred. Aside from the acute airway obstruction, her face also showed signs of trauma of various degrees to the head, particularly the back of her skull. Due to the body being buried in damp soil for so long, it was difficult to determine which injuries were caused by specific blows. Additionally, when the medical team examined her gastrointestinal tract to estimate the time of death, they found partially digested mangoes in stomach. There was also evidence of vomit in her mouth, and her rectal area contained fecal matter. Coupled with Tuk Lung House's statement that he saw her experiencing convulsions, there were 2 possible explanations for her condition. Either she suffered an epileptic seizure or the convulsions were the result of external trauma. But that wasn't all. What made this case even more perplexing was that when Hang Na's body was found, she wasn't wearing any clothes in the cardboard box. Additionally, her private area showed clear signs of assault with visible scratches and bleeding. It became evident that Tuk Lung Hao was not particularly intelligent or skilled in evading suspicion, as he continued to deny his crime during police interviews. In one recorded statement, he claimed that after tying Hang Na up in the room and hiding, he heard a loud thud from where she was tied. When he rushed back into the room, she began vomiting blood, having convulsions, and losing control of her bodily functions. Tuk Lung Hao explained that he panicked. His mind went blank, and although he wanted to untie her, he was unable to do so. At that moment, he recalled a first aid technique he had seen online which suggested applying pressure to the side of the neck. In such situations, he immediately attempted this when using his hands didn't work. He said he laid her on her side and used his foot to press on her neck. Unfortunately, Wang Na did not survive. Continuing his statement, Tuk Lo tried to explain the injuries in her private area. According to him, after his misguided attempts at first aid failed, he saw that things were getting worse. He removed her jacket and placed it over her face to cover her wide-open, clouding eyes in an attempt to ease his fear. Though he couldn't explain why he removed her pants, Tuk Lung Hao claimed that he was patting her back with his right hand while his left hand somehow ended up in an area he couldn't identify as either her genital or anal region. All he knew was that when he withdrew his hand, there was significant bleeding from her lower body. Regarding the location where Tuk Lung Hei and Hang Na played hide-and-seek, police followed his testimony and went to a warehouse divided into 3 rooms on the 15th floor of the wholesale market. Where her mother worked in this room, police found Hang Na's DNA, including hair and blood, as well as cigarette butts with Tuk Lung Hao's saliva and adhesive tape containing his fingerprints. Additionally, there were fibers from the clothes both the perpetrator and the victim were wearing that day, confirming that this was the crime scene when the case went to trial at Singapore's High Court on July 11, 2005. The prosecution charged Tuk Lunga with murder. They presented evidence from 76 witnesses, a variety of physical evidence, and a video reenactment in which Tuk Lung Hao demonstrated the events based on forensic reports. The prosecution summarized the case as follows. At around 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, Tuk Lung Hao lured Hang En to the warehouse on the 15th floor of Block 13 at the wholesale market under the pretense of playing hide-and-seek. Once inside, after eating mangoes, Wang Na was stripped of her clothes, tied up with rope, and sexually assaulted to silence her. The defendant suffocated her by pressing his hands over her mouth and nose until she went limp and lifeless. He then stomped and kicked her head multiple times to ensure she was no longer able to resist. Next, he wrapped her body in 9 layers of plastic bags, placed it inside a cardboard box, and sealed it with tape after completing the packaging around 5:30 p.m. He borrowed a colleague's motorcycle, returned to his apartment, and went about his day as usual. It wasn't until about 8 p.m. that he took the box containing Hang Na's body to Teluk Blenga Hill Park, where he hastily buried it. He returned the motorcycle to his colleague around 9 p.m. Faced with these charges, Tuck Lung remained silent throughout the trial. However, his lawyer pointed out 2 arguments that could either prove his innocence or at least reduce his sentence, according to the defense attorney, while the prosecution had evidence, witnesses, and the defendant's own statements. There was no direct proof that Tuck Lecha was the one who caused Hang Na to stop breathing. To clarify further, as mentioned earlier, it could not be conclusively determined whether Hang Na's airway obstruction was due to being suffocated by having her mouth and nose covered, or from inhaling vomit during a seizure, and even the cause of the seizure itself could not be definitively attributed to external trauma or an epileptic episode, as seizures can sometimes occur spontaneously, even if the family had no history of epilepsy. Additionally, Tuck Lo's defense team of 5 lawyers brought in a psychiatrist to testify about his mental instability, according to this psychiatrist, Tuck Lung. How exhibited symptoms consistent with schizophrenia, such as a lack of emotional response to hang death and delusional thoughts like inventing a story about 3 Chinese men kidnapping the victim. Moreover, when his IQ was tested, Tuck Lung House score was only 76, significantly lower than the average IQ in Malaysia at the time, about 92 in Singapore, about 105, and even lower than the global average IQ in 2004, which was around 83. However, bringing in a psychiatrist didn't seem to help the defense. The prosecution quickly countered, stating that while Tuck Lung Hao's IQ appeared to be well below average, mental impairment is typically only recognized when the IQ is below 70. Furthermore, neither he nor his family had any history of mental illness. The prosecution also pointed out that Tuck Lo's behavior before and after the crime showed no noticeable differences, indicating that he had a very steady psychological state. Another critical point was how he disposed of evidence to cover up his crime instead of discarding Hang Na's clothes in the market trash bins. He chose to dispose of them in a location without cameras, showing calculated effort in concealing his actions after wrapping the victim in 9 layers of plastic bags and placing her in a cardboard box. Tuck Lung Hao remained calm enough to carefully seal the box with tape when the police questioned him. For the first time, he was fully aware that his actions were wrong and needed to be concealed, which is why he was able to lie to the police without hesitation. He even had the presence of mind to steal a police officer's pack as to flee from Singapore to Malaysia. As for his capacity and motive for the crime, when police investigated Tuck Lo's workplace, both his superiors and colleagues mentioned that he had previously tied up a girl with rope to intimidate her because he found her noisy and annoying. Additionally, his relationship with Hang Na wasn't always peaceful, as there were a few occasions when he became so angry that he physically hit her. Therefore, it's not unreasonable to suspect that on that day Hang Na might have done something that triggered him to act violently again. After intense court proceedings on August 27, 2005, Tuck Lungo was found guilty and sentenced to death in January 2006. He filed an appeal. The case was reviewed again, but the original sentence was upheld. However, his family could not accept the verdict and filed for clemency with the president of Singapore. After waiting for over 8 months, their efforts were in vain, and the sentence was carried out on November 3, 2006. As for Hang Na, her funeral was attended by many people who brought flowers, snacks, and her favorite Hello Kitty toys to send her off to her final resting place. But if the story ended there, we would miss a highly controversial postscript after the case was closed. Instead of fading from public attention, negative stories about Hang Na's mother, Hang Shuang, began surfacing online. Going back to the time when Hang Shuang divorced her first husband. She had come to Singapore on a short-term visa. However, she overstayed her visa to work illegally, was eventually arrested, sentenced to prison, and deported back to her home country after serving her sentence. However, the thought of leaving behind a developed country like Singapore and returning to the rural areas of Fuan with few opportunities to earn a living was too difficult for Hang Shuang to accept a fellow inmate. Reportedly advised her to burn off her fingerprints by pressing all 10 of her fingers against a red-hot iron bar, making it impossible for authorities to trace her later when she learned that Singapore had introduced policies to attract skilled talent. She paid 8,000 Singapore dollars to a human trafficking syndicate to illegally re-enter Singapore. However, Hang Na, having no criminal record, was still able to enter Singapore legally. After this dark chapter in Hang Shuang's past was revealed, the police immediately investigated and confirmed the story to be true. Wang Shuang was forced to return to Fuan with her daughter Hang Na's ashes, but the story didn't end there. Rumors circulated online about Hang Na's mother and stepfather's circumstances, after returning to Fuan, painting a very different picture than what the public had imagined it was. Said that during the investigation into Hang Na's case, many people had donated money and goods in support of the family. Allegedly, this money was used to build a mansion complete with a large garage on a small man-made hill, as well as many other luxurious amenities. Upon learning of this, many people began to express support for Tuk Lei Chie, believing they had been wrong to side with Hang Xiang. Some even speculated that the entire incident had been orchestrated by Hang Shuang and her husband. Many criticized her for being an irresponsible mother, allowing her 8-year-old daughter to become so independent and leaving her alone in Singapore while she comfortably traveled back to China. In response to these accusations, Hang Shu claimed that most of the donated money was used to build a proper resting place for her daughter, Wna. She also mentioned that their home had only been expanded by one floor to provide a view of Hang Na's gravesite. Additionally, the remaining funds were donated to improve infrastructure in their village and to support charitable organizations aiming to spread positive values to more people. However, the controversy surrounding the couple continued to escalate. But no matter what the truth may be, the fact remains that little Hang Na's life was tragically cut short at just 8 years old. It's a heartbreak-breaking and unfortunate case, regardless of how the details unfold. Story 5, we continue our series with 3 of the most puzzling and unbelievable cases. The first case took place in Shanxi Province, China, around 9 a.m. On December 16, 2005, the Dingbian Town Police Department received a sudden phone call reporting a crime. The call came from a middle-aged woman named Lu Gawang, according to her 2 days earlier when she returned. At home in the morning, she discovered that several valuable items were missing and her niece had disappeared as well. El Gong hoped the police would investigate the case. About 15 minutes later, Dingbian. Police arrived at the scene after questioning Lu Gawang. They learned that the missing items included a Casio film camera, 2 platinum rings valued at 950 yuan and 700 yuan, along with about $100 in cash. Although the stolen money and belongings weren't significant. After their initial inspection, the police noticed some oddities at the scene. Typically in break-ins, there are signs of forced entry and ransacking. However, in Liu Gong's home, every room appeared tidy, all items were neatly arranged, and there were no signs of an intruder. As for the missing person, it was Li Gong's distant niece, Qi. According to Lu Gung, her niece had just started working at a telecommunications company in Dingbian City, Shanxi Province. 3 months ago, since Chai had not yet found temporary housing, she had been staying at Lu Gong's home on the morning of December 14th, when Li Gung left for a business trip. Qi was still at home, however, when she returned from the trip. Qi had suddenly vanished based on El Gong's recollection around 7:00 p.m. On the same day of her business trip, she received a call from her mother back home. Her mother mentioned that Qi had suddenly called her. Although the call connected, no one spoke on Qi's end. El Go mother assumed it was a poor signal and tried calling back, but she could no longer reach Qi's cell phone. Concerned, she called Lu Gong to check in. Li Gung also tried contacting Qi, but was unable to reach her niece. Li Gung found the situation a bit strange, but since she was on a business trip at the time, she didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until 2 days later, when she returned home from her trip, that she realized what had happened. Based on this, investigators speculated Shai have taken her aunt's belongings and fled from the evidence gathered at the scene. It seemed likely that the perpetrator could have been someone familiar with the family. Therefore, the Dingbian police decided to start investigating leads related to Chi. The investigators agreed that once they found Chi, the theft could likely be solved easily. However, what they didn't expect was that the truth behind the entire case would be far beyond what any of the police officers imagined that afternoon. After Liu Gung reported the case, Dingbian police went to Chi's usual workplace to investigate at the telecommunications company. A supervisor of Chi named Zhu Fumin recalled that on the morning of December 14th, Chi had come to work as usual and around 5:30 p.m. That day, she had left for home just like any other day. However, the next morning, Chi didn't show up for work. Jimin called her, but her phone was off. Chia's unexplained absence made her colleagues at the company feel something was off. Still, based on their statements, Chowie showed no signs of unusual behavior on her last day at work. Dingen police also learned that although Chie had been working at the telecommunications company for less than 3 months, she was receiving her salary on time. Chia's fixed monthly salary was around $270, and given that she was unmarried and had no children, her financial situation seemed quite stable, so why would she steal from her own aunt? As investigators were grappling with this question, Lu Gung, the one who reported the case, called the police again. She reported that while cleaning up the house, she had discovered some strange clues. The Dingbian police immediately returned to the scene for a second investigation in the corner of the living room. There was a large wooden cabinet over 6 feet tall. According to Li Gowong, there had initially been 2 black suitcases on top of this cabinet. While packing up, Li Gung suddenly noticed that one of the large suitcases was missing. This led investigators to consider whether Chi might have stolen both her aunt's belongings and the suitcase at the same time. To verify this possibility, the Dingbian police proceeded to search Chi's bedroom. There they discovered a wooden cabinet about 3 feet tall. Next to the bedroom door on top of the cabinet were 2 items. One was a set of keys that Chi typically used according to Li Gung. This set of keys included the keys to the front door in Chi's bedroom. The other item was a black handbag. Upon investigation, police found that the contents of the handbag were neatly arranged with no signs of tampering. Additionally, investigators found Chi's bank's savings book under the pillow in her bedroom, showing a balance of over $700 US. These unexpected discoveries led Dingbian police to reconsider their initial assumptions, which no longer seemed to make sense. If Chowie had stolen the camera and silver rings from Li Gung, why didn't she take her own personal belongings as well if Chie wasn't the thief? Then, who was based on the keys and the handbag found in Cheche's bedroom, the Dingbian police deduced 2 key facts first. On the evening of December 14th, after finishing work at the telecommunications company, Chai had returned to Lu Gong's home seconder. Disappearance after that night did not appear to be a premeditated action if she had left her aunt's house. It's possible Chi encountered an unexpected situation which forced her to leave in a hurry. To aid in the investigation, police quickly contacted CH Le's parents, according to her father, Xiaozhong. The last conversation he had with his daughter was around 5:30 p.m. on December 14th. During that phone call, Chie spoke with him normally, showing no signs of distress or anything unusual. The police then retrieved the call. History from Chi's mobile phone. The results showed that after she left work that day, Kaicha's phone made a total of 3 calls. The first call was to her father at around 5:45 p.m. On December 14th, lasting 13 minutes, the second call was to Lu Gong's mobile phone at around 6:23 p.m. But the call didn't connect. The third call was to Lu Gong's mother at around 6:51 p.m. This call was particularly strange as it only lasted 9 seconds. The police later spoke with Lu Gong's mother to gather more information. She explained that she didn't hear Chi Le's voice during the call, instead said she heard the sound of car horns suggesting that Chie was outside on a busy street. After this brief call, Chi's mobile phone could no longer be reached at this point. Investigators began to suspect something was wrong, suspecting that Chi may have been kidnapped. Meanwhile, that same afternoon, the investigation team stationed at Lu Gong's house made some crucial discoveries. In one of the bathrooms, police found 2 small bloodstains. One was on the bathroom floor, lodged between the tiles. Additionally, they found some traces of blood on the edge of a box located under the toilet. The second bloodstain was on a tile behind the bathroom door and was larger than the first. The investigators collected DNA from both bloodstains and compared it with DNA from Chia's parents. The analysis confirmed that both bloodstains found in Li Gong's bathroom belonged to Chi, who had been missing for several days. Combining all the findings, the police hypothesized that Chowie did not leave the house voluntarily, but rather she may have been kidnapped and trafficked. Elsewhere, based on this theory, the police quickly assembled a special investigation team and began to dive deeper into the social connections between Xiao Li and Liu Guang. Meanwhile, the investigation team continued to expand their search of the crime scene after confirming that she was missing. The police questioned the neighbors living next to Li Gong's house. All of them reported that on the day of the incident they didn't hear any unusual noises. The scene of the crime was located in a small, relatively secluded residential area with surrounding walls. All of these walls were over 6 feet high, making it difficult for a person to enter or exit the neighborhood by climbing over them. Therefore, the police speculated that the person who broke in and kidnapped Chia likely entered through the front door of Lu Gong's house. Unfortunately, the area around the front entrance was not equipped with surveillance cameras, so the police were unable to use footage to track people entering and exiting the neighborhood. However, at 11 p.m., each night the main gate of the residential area is locked, and after that, anyone entering or leaving the neighborhood must go to the guard post and knock on the door to be let in. As a result, the police quickly located the night guard who was on duty. The night of the incident, for questioning, the guard stated that in the early hours of the day of the crime, between 2 and 3 a.m., a man knocked on the door from outside. According to the guard's memory, the man had an accent from a different region and was about 5 feet 7 inches tall. At the time, the man was wearing dark-colored clothing, and it was late at night, so the guard couldn't clearly see his face. However, based on the man's voice, the guard estimated him to be between 20 and 30 years old. Although the man claimed to be a neighborhood resident, the guard recalled that he had never seen a young man with that kind of accent before. With this information, the investigators considered the possibility that this young man's late-night departure from the neighborhood seemed suspicious. However, during the time frame before and after the man left the neighborhood, the guard did not see Chowie entering or exiting the area. This surprised the investigators. Could it be that Chow had left the neighborhood before 11 p.m. that night? At this point, the police decided to conduct a more thorough investigation into the identity of the man. Meanwhile, the on-site team discovered another strange detail in Li Gong's home. According to Li Gong, a knife from the kitchen drawer had suddenly gone missing. The police later found the knife in the dining room near the kitchen. However, the location where the knife was hidden was very secretive in Li Gong's home. There was a white cabinet mounted on the wall, and the missing knife was hidden on top of this cabinet. Lu Gong recalled that she and her niece rarely cooked, so the knife was usually kept in the kitchen drawer. The fact that it was found on top of the cabinet in the dining room struck her as very strange. Even more surprising, there were no fingerprints on the knife. The police speculated that if someone had used the knife for ordinary purposes, there would likely be fingerprints. This led them to suspect that the perpetrator had handled the knife. The police sent the knife to the lab for further testing. At the same time, to identify the suspicious man who entered and exited the residential area. On the night of the incident, the police began investigating Chia's social connections. According to her colleagues at the telecommunications company, Che's social circle at work was not complicated. She was known for being introverted and mild-mannered. As a result, she didn't interact much with her co-workers. Chow's family also mentioned that despite having been working for over 2 years, her lifestyle remained quite simple. Typically, the people Chowie communicated with most frequently were her parents and her fiancé, who lived far away. According to Che's father, her fiancé's name was Wei Jun, a 26-year-old from Bok City, Shangi Province, after graduating from a vocational school. Despite working in different cities, Chia Li and Wei Jun had still decided to get married. Mr. Xiaozhang told the police that on February 8, 2005, based on the lunar calendar, Chia Li and Wu Jun had held a simple engagement ceremony in their hometown in May County, and they had planned to have their wedding by the end of 2005. Everything seemed happy and promising. However, during the investigation into Chia Li's social circle, Dingbian police made Wei Jun a primary sub-subject of their inquiry. There were three reasons for this. First, Wooly Jun was from Boka Shangi province near the city of Jan. People from Bio speak with an accent similar to that of Zan, which is quite different from the local Ulan dialect. Therefore, to someone from Dingbian, Wooly Jun's accent could be considered non-local. Second, Wooly Jun's age and height closely matched the description given by the security guard at the residential area. Third, as Chow's fiancé, Wooly Jun could easily have entered Luo Gong's home under the pretense of their existing relationship on the day of the incident. Considering these suspicions, the investigation team decided to send 2 officers to Bok to look into Woi Jun. Based on Wo Jun's testimony from December 14th to about half a month prior, he had been working regularly in Bok City. His colleagues confirmed this, clearing him of suspicion. Meanwhile, the investigation team continued to expand their search, looking into Chow's family, friends, colleagues, and former classmates. However, after interviewing nearly 100 people, the police still found no evidence connecting any of them to the suspicious man. 5 days had passed since the incident, and Chow's family grew increasingly worried. As a result, her father and uncle organized relatives and friends to search for Chow themselves. At this point, the police also began investigating Lu Gong's social connections. According to her testimony, after divorcing her husband 2 years earlier, she had been living alone in a second-floor apartment with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Although divorced, her children were in the custody of her ex-husband. So Lu Gong led a colorful and free life. While talking, she suddenly remembered someone who had visited her home, although this person wasn't a close acquaintance. Li Gowang recalled that it was quite possible they could have been involved in the theft. At this point, Li Gong shared a rather strange romantic story with the investigators. According to her, after her divorce, she began online dating. Using the QQ software on her computer, she quickly got to know about 10 men, some of whom she had good conversations with and agreed to meet in person. Over half a year ago, Li Gong successfully began dating a young man, among them named Fang Jia, a 28-year-old from Gansu province. However, due to his job, he had been living in Yinchuan Ningxui Autonomous Region for quite some time. Feeling lonely, Lu Gong had traveled to Yinchuan 3 times to visit Fang Jia. In addition to Fang Jia, she also met several other young men, including a young man nicknamed Xe Dong, a neighbor of Fang Jia who left a strong impression on her. This was because the night before, Chiai disappeared. Xe Dong had visited her home. At that time, Li Gong and Shai were sitting at home watching TV when they suddenly heard a knock at the door. To Lu Gong's surprise, it was Xia Dong. He told Lu Gong that he had originally come to Dingbian to meet an online friend but had lost his wallet, so he wanted to borrow 20 yuan from her to take a ride back to Yinchuan. Without thinking much, Lu Gong quickly lent him the 20 yuan. However, Xiao Dongbi didn't leave right away. He pulled Lu Gong into the bedroom and closed the door. After about half an hour, Chiai, sitting in the living room, began to feel uneasy, so she found an excuse to call Lu Gong back to the living room. Seeing this, Xia Dongbi quickly left Lu Gong's house. After hearing Li Gong's story, the investigators considered Xiao Dong's sudden appearance highly suspicious. Moreover, based on Li Gong's description of his local accent, age, and height, these characteristics closely matched the guard's description. Xia Dongbei now became the primary suspect. Consequently, the investigation team immediately sent 3 officers to Yinchuan to conduct further investigation. Based on the clues provided by Li Gowang, the police quickly located the rental house where Xia Dongbi had been living. However, his neighbor Fang Ji informed them that Cao Dongbi had moved out a few days earlier and no one knew where he had gone. The investigators continued questioning Fang Jia for more information about Zhao Dongbei. Since everyone in the area was renting, neither Fang Jia nor the other neighbors knew where Xia Dongbei was from or where he worked. They only recognized that he had a regional accent from Dongbei, which is why they called him Xe Dongbi. As for his real name, no one in the neighborhood knew. However, Fang Jayaprav eyed the police with a useful lead. He mentioned that Xia Dong had once brought a girlfriend to his rental home. According to Xia Dongbi, his girlfriend's name was Xiao Fping, and she was from the Ningxia Autonomous Region. Notably, Xiao Fangying had visited Xiao Dongbi several times, and based on her appearance and attire, it seemed like she worked in the entertainment industry. Although Fangjia didn't have much information, the Dingbian police had to rely on these limited clues to trace any possible leads on this individual Aijul with the cooperation of the Yinchuan City Police. The investigation team launched a 5-day search at various entertainment establishments. However, they found no trace of either Xiao Fping or Xiao Dongbi. The police then traveled to Xiaoping's hometown where they located her parents. According to her parents, their daughter had left the village 2 years ago and hadn't returned since she had called them last year during the Lunar New Year, saying, "I'm working in the Yuan area, don't worry about me." However, Xiaofing's parents told the police that they had no idea where their daughter was. Now the investigators left a contact number with her parents and then returned to their station with the case stalled for an extended period. The police issued a reward notice seeking any concrete information about Zia Dong or Chiai. Unfortunately, more than 6 months passed without any new leads. Initially, Chi's parents were hopeful that the police would solve the case quickly whenever a homicide occurred in Shanxi province involving a female victim. Chia's father and uncle would travel to the area trying to gather as much information as possible. However, after more than a year, Chia's family had found no news about her. Meanwhile, as the Dingbian police investigation failed to make any significant breakthroughs, they gradually shifted their focus to other cases. This left Chi's family feeling disheartened. Then, 3 years after the case, the Dingbian police unexpectedly received a phone call from an unknown number. The caller was none other than Xiaoping's father, the girlfriend of Zia Dongbi. He informed the police that his daughter had returned home, and if they wanted to question her, they could come right away. This good news greatly excited the entire investigation team during the interview. However, Zhao Fanning initially appeared uncooperative and did not want to reveal her ex-boyfriend's real name to the police. After several rounds of patient persuasion, she finally disclosed some personal information about Xiaodong Bei. According to her, his real name was Quan Wei, and he was 30 years old, although his official residence was registered in Wanghonan province. Quain listed his birthplace as Hongjiang on his household registration, which aligned with his Dongbei accent. Next, the police questioned Xiao Funing further about her relationship with Quan Wei during the time they lived together. Unexpectedly, Xiao Funing accidentally revealed a shocking secret about Quan Wei. She explained that in early 2003, she was working in Wanghonan province. At that time, a girl named Dan rented an apartment in the same building as her. It was through Dan's introduction that Xiao Fping met Quan Wei. Shortly after Xiao Fping and Quan Wei began living together. At first, the three of them lived happily, but then something strange happened. Xiao Fanging said that in May 2003, she went on a business trip to another city in Honan province. After 6 days, she returned to her rental apartment in Wong and discovered that her friend Dan was dead. Under the bed at that time, her boyfriend Quan Wei had also disappeared, without a trace, because Xiao Fanning was a very timid person. She was terrified and quickly left Wong. 3 days later, she returned to the apartment to collect some personal belongings and out of curiosity wanted to check on Dan. To her surprise, when she entered Dan's room, she found that Dan's body had vanished, without a trace. Xiao Foming had admitted that she had suspected Quan Wei might have been involved in the incident, but out of fear, she never contacted him again to avoid suspicion. Xiao Fengning moved back to her hometown in Ning Sui Autonomous Region. About a month later, Quan Wei came to see her out of fear. Xiao Funing agreed to continue their relationship, but they did not live together as they had before. Xiao Funing said that although she and Quan Wei continued dating fairly regularly, by December 2005, they had a heated argument over work. After that, Quain suddenly disappeared, without a trace. So Fanning thought he had left Yinchuan, but a week later he suddenly reappeared in her apartment. Quan Wei told Xiao Fping, "If anyone comes asking about me, don't reveal any information. I need to go back to Hunan for a startup project. And once I'm successful, I'll come back to take you with me at that time." Xiao Fanging believed him. She continued working at an amusement park and waited for Quan Wei's return initially. Xiao Fanning could still contact Quan Wei by phone, but about 6 months later she found that his phone number was suddenly unreachable. Xiaofing told the police that she went to Wyong Hunan province to look for Quan Wei, but he seemed to have vanished completely. No one there knew his whereabouts. After verifying this information, The investigators were almost certain that Quan Wei's sudden disappearance in December 2005 was likely connected to Chow's case with the assistance of Hunan police. Quan Wei's whereabouts were quickly determined in 2006 when Dingbian police arrived in Wyong. They found that Quan had been sentenced to 8 years in prison for rape and was still incarcerated. At this point, one of the officers noticed an issue with Quan Wei's sentencing record. The record showed that Quan had been arrested by Hunan police on August 2, 2005, and later in October 2005, the Wyong City People's Court officially sentenced him to 8 years in prison, with his sentence starting on August 2, 2005 and ending on August 2015, 2013. Meanwhile, in Changi, the exact date Charlie went missing was the night of December 14, 2005. This meant that at the time of Chow's disappearance, Quan had already been in Hunan police custody for over 4 months. This made it impossible for him to have traveled to Changi to commit the crime, so could Xiao Dongbi, who had previously been involved with Xiao Fangping, actually be Quan Wei, who was now in prison, or was Xiao Funning? Lying to the police to verify these suspicions, the police brought a photo of Quan Wei for Xiao Funning to identify Xiao Funing, confirmed that the man in the photo was indeed Xiao Dongbi, her former boyfriend, the Dingbian police. Then showed the same photo to Lu Guang and her boyfriend Fang Jia, and both also confirmed that the man was Xiao Dongbi. The investigation team was completely baffled, as the lead they had been hoping for didn't provide the breakthrough they expected. With the investigation at a standstill, the Dingbian police decided to send more investigators to Hunan province. They hoped that by visiting Quan Wei's hometown, they might find additional clues there. A neighbor provided a critical piece of information. He had worked alongside Quan Wei's parents at a factory. The couple had twin sons. The older one was named Quan Wei, and the younger one was Quan Chia. Although the family appeared happy, both sons caused trouble as they grew up, and their parents had no choice but to sell their home and move back to their old residence in Halongjiang province. Based on this neighbor's information, the Dingbian police quickly tracked down Quan Xiao Quan Wei's twin brother. They compared the household registration photos of the two brothers, and although their hairstyles were different, their faces and facial features were remarkably similar. Moreover, according to the neighbor's description, Quan Wei and his younger brother Quan Chia were not only similar in appearance, but also in height and weight. As a result, it was difficult for outsiders to tell them apart in a short time. However, their parents and some close relatives had a specific way to distinguish them. The neighbor explained that Quania, the younger brother, was missing 2 joints on his left pinky finger, while Quan Wei's left pinky was completely intact. Armed with this crucial information, the Dingbian police went to the prison in Hunan province. They secretly obtained Quan Wei's fingerprints through local judicial authorities, and the results showed that the inmate named Quan Wei, who is currently serving time in prison, had no corresponding fingerprints on his left pinky finger. This meant that the person incarcerated in Hunan province was not Quan Wei, but his twin brother, Quan Chia. This situation left the investigators perplexed. Why would Quania serve time in prison on behalf of his brother? The investigation team soon discovered that back in 1995, Quania had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for theft and was released in November 20. However, in 2018, August 2005, after reoffending by committing rape, he was arrested by the Honan police. According to the relevant laws, if a person reoffends within 5 years of being released, it is considered a repeat offense and is subject to harsher punishment. The investigating officers speculated that Quania might have assumed his brother Quan Wei's identity to avoid a more severe penalty. This suspicion was later confirmed by Quania himself during his confession. However, despite searching throughout Wang, the police found no leads on Quan Wei. Considering that Quan Wei's parents had returned to their hometown, the police decided to investigate further in Halongjiang province as a result of their interviews with Quan Wei's parents. The investigation team quickly tracked down Quan Wei. The twist this time was that he had been living under his younger brother Quan Chia's identity. The reason for this switch was that on March 21, 2007, Quan Wei was arrested by the Heilongjiang police for theft. At that time, Quan assumed his brother's identity to stand trial. Ultimately, Quane was sentenced to 10 years in prison by the People's Court for theft under his brother's name. After more than 3 years of investigation, the police finally found the primary suspect in the case. However, they couldn't act hastily as they lacked any concrete evidence connecting Quan Wei directly to the crime scene. The police then reviewed all the case materials, hoping to find any direct evidence that we had left behind at the crime scene. Unfortunately, in the investigations conducted 3 years earlier, no fingerprints or hair samples from any suspect were found. The only thing they could confirm was that a kitchen knife had been moved from its original location at the crime scene. However, the knife had been thoroughly cleaned, leaving no trace of forensic evidence on the blade or handle on September 28, 2011. The Dingbian police brought in a highly experienced retired investigator, Gay Genli. The investigation team then made a second trip to the Heilongjiang province prison. This time, they conducted an interrogation with the suspect, Quan Wei. However, Quane resisted strongly and refused to provide any information after the interrogation. The team immediately collected Quan Wei's fingerprints and a blood sample. At that moment, he appeared visibly frightened upon reviewing the case again. The blood stain on the corner of the wall behind the bathroom door caught the attention of the investigation team. Based on his extensive criminal investigation experience, G.A. Genli quickly formed a hypothesis. He suggested that the small scattered blood stain pattern could be the result of contact between a mop and the tiles on the wall. After testing this theory, it was confirmed to be accurate. This indicated that in the bathroom at the crime scene, the perpetrator had used a dark red mop to clean up the traces of the crime. Although the mop had been thoroughly cleaned, G.A. gently deduced that there had initially been a substantial amount of blood present in the bathroom during the crime. Additionally, the knife found at the scene had several curved dents. The police believed that the main reason for this was that the blade wasn't strong enough, and when it struck something harder, such as bone, it bent. Based on this assumption and the missing suitcase, the police theorized that Chiai, who had been missing for years, might have been dismembered and placed in the suitcase before being removed from the neighborhood by the perpetrator. Unfortunately, the crime had taken place more than 6 years prior, and the house had changed owners multiple times. As a result, the investigators missed the opportunity to search for other evidence at the crime scene. Despite multiple analyses, GAGLE remained focused on the knife. With the curved dents, he and his colleagues believed that the knife had been stored for many years and that the blade surface had been cleaned by the perpetrator. However, the handle and the guard between the handle and the blade had not yet been forensically examined. For this reason, in December 2011, the investigation team decided to send the knife to the Forensic Testing Center in Shanghai Province for a more detailed examination. The results revealed that between the handle and the guard of the knife, technicians found 2 small skin tissue samples lodged in the crevice. Finally, through DNA comparison, the Forensic Testing Center concluded that the 2 skin cell samples recovered from the knife matched Quan Wei's DNA with 99.9% certainty. This meant that the knife found at the crime scene had been used by the suspect Quan Wei as the murder. Based on this evidence, the police quickly brought Quan Wei back to Shanghai for further investigation. That same evening, the investigation team conducted an interrogation late into the night. However, Quane refused to admit that he was the man known by the nickname XA Dong B. He continued to claim that he was Quan Chia, and when the police asked about his family situation, Quan Wei stubbornly refused to answer. The investigators presented the direct EVD evidence found on the knife. After more than 2 hours of pressure, Quan Wei's defensive stance finally broke. He confessed that he was not Quan Chao, but indeed Quan Wei. He then admitted in detail to the murder of Chao, rewinding to December 11, 2005. Quan Wei, who was in Yinchuan City, had a fight with his girlfriend Xiaofing. He then returned to his rental room and made plans to meet an online friend the next day. Quan Wei had arranged to meet this online friend at an internet cafe in Ding County. Before leaving, he remembered his neighbor's girlfriend, Lu Gowang, who also lived in Dingbian County. Quan Wei asked Fang Jia for the exact address of Lu Gong's house. On December 13, 2005, Quane traveled to Dingbian by bus to meet his online friend. However, he unexpectedly had his wallet and phone stolen with no other option. Quano decided to go to El Gong's house to borrow money. That evening, Li Gung lent Quane 20 yuan. but Quan lured Lu Gung into the bedroom. About half an hour later, their intimate conversation was suddenly interrupted by Chaua Quan. Wei then left Lu Gong's house, but an evil intention began to form in his mind. The next evening, Quan returned to Li Gong's house intending to borrow more money. However, Chie told Quan Wei that his girlfriend wasn't home. Quan didn't leave. Instead, saying, "I'll wait for Li Gung in the living room," he then forcefully barged into Lu Gong's home. At that point, Chao Wei attempted to call Lu Gowang, but the call didn't go through. Chao Wei began to mutter some vulgar remarks to herself in a fit of rage. Quan Wei strangled Choi to death. The police asked him, "Why did you lose control like that? What did Choi say to you?" Quain responded, "I don't remember exactly, but she basically said I was scamming Lu Gowang out of money." According to Quan Wei's confession, after killing Chowie, he panicked and quickly came up with a plan to dispose of the body by putting it in garbage bags around 7 p.m. That evening, Quain took Chow's mobile phone to a street outside the residential area, intending to call Lu Gung to make her believe Chowie was still alive. However, he accidentally called Lu Gong's mother, and after a few seconds he hung up and switched off Chia's phone for good. Next, Quan Wei went to a nearby convenience store and bought some trash bags. He then returned to Lu Gong's house, moved Chow's body into the bathroom, and took a knife from the kitchen drawer. He dismembered the body and retrieved a black suitcase from on top of the cabinet in the living room by around 2 a.m. He had finished cleaning and sanitizing the entire crime scene. Before leaving, Quain entered Lu Gong's bedroom and stole a camera and 2 rings. After leaving the scene, Quan Wei threw Che's clothes into a roadside trash bin. He then hailed a taxi and went to a remote suburban area where he knew of an old and used well. He disposed of Chow's body in the well, and the black suitcase was discarded in a pile of trash near a canal to gather evidence. The police took Quan Wei to that suburban area to identify the disposal site. 6 years had passed since the crime, and the area where Chow's body had been dumped had since been developed into a coal plant. After a lengthy search, the Dingbian police finally located the well in a small corner of the coal plant when they recovered the body. The investigation team also found a black hairpin. Li Gung later confirmed that the hairpin had belonged to Chowie. After 6 years of challenging investigations, the case of the home invasion murder was finally solved on the morning of June 27, 2013. The Intermediate People's Court of Shangi Province held the trial of Quain when the prosecutor recounted the details of how Choi was killed. Chow's father couldn't hold back his tears on the defendant's bench. Quain kept his head down and repeatedly expressed remorse toward the victim's family, although Quan Wei pleaded for a chance to rehabilitate himself. After more than 3 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The defendant, Quan Wei, was sentenced to death for robbery and premeditated murder. He was also stripped of his political rights for life and had all his personal assets confiscated. Additionally, Quain was ordered to pay a total of 10,000 yuan in economic compensation to the plaintiffs Mr. Qiao Zhang and Li Gung on January 22, 2015. The death sentence was carried out with that the nearly 10-year-long case was finally brought to a close. This was undoubtedly a very long story with many unexpected twists and numerous individuals involved. I hope I've told it to you as clearly as possible. Our next case takes place in Guangxi Province, China, formerly known as the Guangxi Zhang Autonomous Region, near the First People's Hospital of Ulan City. Guangxi, there are numerous makeshift buildings, though these buildings appear run down and the living conditions are poor. Many people still reside there due to their proximity to the hospital. However, on March 22, 2012, in a building less than 650 feet from the hospital, a nurse living on the second floor discovered that her drain was suddenly clogged. She called her boyfriend, who worked at the local police station, for help, and together they contacted the landlord. Upon inspection, they pulled a large amount of ground meat from the drain pipe. This puzzled everyone who would throw so much meat down the drain. It didn't make any sense. The people living in this area were struggling financially, and it seemed odd that someone would waste so much meat. What was even more disturbing was that the meat didn't look ordinary. The landlord immediately called the police. When the police arrived, they pulled out 2,368 pieces of ground meat from the pipe. Even more horrifying, after testing, it was confirmed to be human tissue. Later, the police found an electric cooker and a black plastic bee bag containing bones in an apartment on the third floor. A gruesome and terrifying crime was unfolding, leaving everyone in shock. So, who was the victim and who rented the apartment on the third floor? These were just a few of the many questions police were asking. Soon after, following a swift investigation, the tenant was arrested on her way home from work. To their surprise, the suspect was an innocent-looking, fragile nurse named Liaoning. No one could believe that this woman could be behind such a horrific act. Was there more to this story? Let's take a closer look at the background of this nurse. Funing was born in 1995 in Bui County, Guangxi, China. She came from an extremely impoverished and challenging family background. Fan Bing was the eldest of 4 siblings. Her father worked odd jobs for a meager income, which wasn't enough to cover the medical expenses of her mother, who was too ill with uterine fibroids to work given the family's difficult circumstances. Many parents would have chosen to pull their children out of school early to help support the household. However, Fling's father was different. He understood that his lack of education had limited his opportunities for a decent job. Because of this, he made sure that none of his 4 children were allowed to drop out of school. Life for Fanning was also incredibly challenging. In addition to her schoolwork, she had to take care of her sick mother cook and look after her younger siblings. Despite all these hardships, she maintained excellent academic performance. When she entered college, she received a scholarship covering tuition costs of 6,000 yuan. Each semester, Fanning became a source of pride for her entire family. Fing graduated from Guangxi Medical University in 2017. At that time, 3 hospitals offered her a position, one in Nanning, one in Liu, and the other at the First People's Hospital in New Lan. Fanning discussed with her father which hospital to choose. Working in Nanning offered the best career prospects, and Liu had the highest salary. However, she ultimately chose Ulan for one simple reason: it was close to home. A 2-hour taxi ride meant it would be convenient for her to visit and care for her ill mother while this was her plan. Reality turned out quite different from what Fing had imagined. Aside from holidays, she rarely had time to visit home. She rented an apartment about 325 square feet in size, located in an alley behind the hospital's main gate. Though the building was old, the rent was affordable at only 350 yuan per month after officially starting work at the hospital. Funing had to go through China's medical training rotation system. This required young medical staff to undergo rotational training in various departments for about 3 years before being permanently assigned to a specific unit. This meant that Fan Bing had to rotate through all the hospital departments before receiving a permanent position. Every time she moved to a new department, she had to start over from the most basic nursing tasks and gradually work her way up. But with dozens of departments in the hospital, every transfer required her to pay fees, similar to bribes. It was an exhausting process as a new employee. Her salary in each department ranged from about 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, and after a while it could increase to 7,000 to 8,000 yuan. But each time she was transferred, Fanning had to start from the beginning. Again, fast forward to June 2018. At that time, Funing was transferred from the neonatal unit to the spine surgery and orthopedics department. One night, while working the night shift, she was chatting with a colleague who introduced her to a disguised lottery game, which in reality was a form of gambling. When Fing first learned about this game, she thought it would be fun and even better, could help her make some extra money. However, she had no idea that this was the start of a downward spiral for the young nurse. The game didn't require registration on a mobile phone or any personal identification. You could choose how much to bet and how often with no restrictions. The game was entirely based on luck. Strangely, players would always win during the first few rounds, but those early wins didn't result in profit to make any real money. You had to keep winning multiple rounds to cover the amount you had already bet. It was a trap that most players didn't recognize. Fing quickly became addicted to the game, unable to break free, and money became meaningless to her over time. Her bets grew larger and larger. She could lose 10T of thousands of yuan in a single round, but even when she won, she'd only break even. Her biggest winning day netted her 100,000 yuan. However, in this type of online gambling, there are no ultimate winners within a year. Fing had transferred a total of 2.9 million yuan across two bank accounts. To the platform, that amount was a staggering sum for a nurse who had only been working for 1 year. As a result, Fing came up with the idea of borrowing to invest, borrowing money to gamble, and hoping to earn enough to repay her debts. With this mindset, she began borrowing money from her coworkers, claiming it was for her mother's cervical cancer treatment. Fanning was known for being smart, outgoing, and hardworking, so she had built a positive image at the hospital. Typically, she would borrow a few thousand yuan at a time and sometimes pay it back. After receiving her salary at this point, her coworkers' wallets had become a revolving door of debt for her. Initially, the borrowed money allowed her to cover some losses, but it was never enough to fill the growing financial hole she was in. By July 2019, Foaming took things a step further. She exploited a loan program from the Bank of China, which offered healthcare workers in Ulan City a credit limit of up to 300,000 yuan. She asked her coworkers to take out loans and their names to help her. Most of the older nurses declined her request outright, but a few younger nurses who had closer relationships with F. Bing agreed to help her secure a loan of 300,000 on. As Funk Bing sank deeper into gambling, she never asked her family for help. Although she appeared somewhat fragile, Funk Bing had a rather bold personality. This was evident in an incident that occurred one day at work while she was drawing blood from a patient. Someone else kept knocking on the door, irritated. Foaming snapped, "Why are you knocking?" Fortunately, with the intervention of the head nurse, she was able to successfully apologize to the person involved. Despite years of training at the hospital, Fing continued to face her challenges alone as her family was too poor to offer any support. In addition to borrowing money from her coworkers, she had a record of taking out numerous online loans within just 6 months. Fing used every available loan platform, all through her own credit cards, and most of these platforms were predatory lenders with high interest rates. Because of this, her life and thoughts were constantly tormented. Even though there were times she would win hundreds of thousands of yuan in a single day, she still found life meaningless, unable to satisfy the deep thirst within her. Despite the large sums from her loans, Fanning spent almost nothing on herself. She continued living in the same 350 yuan apartment even when she wanted to buy a refrigerator. She hesitated for a long time before deciding to spend a few hundred yuan on one. From Tal, as time went on, her situation deteriorated further, and eventually the turning point that led to her crime arrived in October 2019. Out of sheer desperation, Fing reached out to Dr. Luo Ping, the deputy head of the spinal surgery department, on WeChat, asking if he could lend her 200,000 yuan now about Lo Ping. He was 51 years old, and people often remarked on his wealth. He was known to drive a BMW SUV shortly after Funing contacted him. To her surprise, Luo Ping agreed, but naturally there was a condition the two arranged to meet at an upscale hotel near the hospital. According to F. Ping, this was a day filled with humiliation, one that would forever change her life that day. When F. Ping entered the room, she saw Luo Ping standing there not dressed as usual. She immediately felt disgusted by his behavior. Fanning wanted to leave, but he didn't allow her to go and forced her into having relations with him the next day. Funing received the money, but it wasn't the 200,000 yuan she had asked for. It was only 50,000 yuan. To make matters worse, she even had to sign an IOU for the money she borrowed from Luo Ping. What confuses me is that Fan Bing always expressed disgust toward the arrangement, yet she continued to meet with Luo Ping under the same conditions. From October 2019 to February 2020, they met at a hotel a total of 13 times. After each encounter, Luo Ping, the deputy head of the department, would transfer money to F. Ping. It wasn't until March 2020 that the full 200,000 yuan he had promised her was finally paid. Even though she received the entire amount, F. Ping was left feeling full of resentment. Clearly, Fanning wasn't entirely innocent, but Dr. Luo Ping took advantage of her desperate situation for his own satisfaction. On top of that, Luo Ping repeatedly threatened her, saying that if she didn't comply, he would expose her and make sure she couldn't stay at the hospital. He told her, "I have connections with the police department and the prosecutor's office. If you report this, you'll be arrested immediately at this." This point Funing's situation became increasingly dire for a young woman who had left her hometown to work and was now drowning in debt. This job was essential. Additionally, she feared the stigma her family would place on her in her desperation. All she could think about was ending it all. Funing soon fell into depression. According to her medical records, she had been prescribed a total of 100 sleeping pills as she was suffering from insomnia and could only sleep for 3 to 4 hours a night. Over the course of a month, she took 80 sleeping pills, but fortunately, nothing happened as she would often vomit afterward. The second time she left the gas valve open in a sealed room overnight, but that attempt also failed the third time. She took 2 vials of insulin from the hospital and injected herself with 800 units. But Funing still couldn't end her life by March 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic had started to surge in China due to restrictions. They couldn't book hotel rooms anymore. Ling asked Fing to rent another place near the hospital and he would cover the rent, so she rented a nearby apartment on the night of March 20th. As usual, Loping came to the rental place in a drunken state. As soon as he walked in, he undressed and demanded Funking to serve him. However, Fun Bing was in the middle of playing a game and didn't want to bother with him. Loping then mentioned that he hadn't eaten yet. Fing refused him, saying she hadn't showered. Luoping became furious, hurling in insults and threatening to get her fired. After a while of ranting, he eventually fell asleep, snoring loudly, sitting at the edge of the bed. Fing grew more and more furious, thinking about the humiliation and disgust he caused her in her anger. Fing picked up her phone and searched online with the keyword, "What to do if you truly hate someone." Among the many search results, she stumbled upon a terrifying suggestion: make him disappear forever. That idea suddenly took over her mind and she couldn't stop thinking about how to make it happen. She started wondering how the weak could overpower the strong, and eventually she decided to strangle him with a computer cord at around 1 a.m. Fing picked up a computer cable, wrapped it around Lang's neck, and pulled hard. He woke up struggling and they wrestled on the bed with Loping, grabbing tightly at the cord. A few minutes later, Loping became motionless. Funing was either unusually strong or her pent-up anger gave her extra strength at that moment. Afterward, she touched his cord artery but felt no pulse. Strangely enough, she instinctively began to perform CPR on him, but he remained still, with no signs of life at that point. Fing accepted that he was dead. Perhaps killing him had only been a spontaneous reaction, one she couldn't control, but now it was too late. Quickly regaining her composure, Fing used Lang's fingerprint to unlock his phone and transferred 98,000 yuan to her own card. But in an instant, the money was automatically deducted by an online lending platform, leaving her with just 900 yuan. At this point, Funing tried different methods, such as taking half-body photos using Lang's bank cards and his ID to apply for loans. However, since all the procedures required verification from a person who was conscious, she couldn't get any money during the early morning hours. Before dawn, Fing also searched on his phone for information on how to destroy evidence, perfectly erase stolen card traces, alter health insurance car registration, and other details. Even more horrifying was that by 8:80 a.m. on March 21st, Fing didn't flee. Instead, she calmly dressed up and went to work at the hospital like nothing had happened. She only began destroying the evidence after returning home at 6 p.m. Later, Funing told her lawyer that she did this because she wanted to prevent bacteria from growing, so she had to handle it quickly. It took her more than 20 hours from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. the next day to dismember Luoping into over 2,000 pieces, given her profession as a nurse. This wasn't difficult for her. Some of the larger pieces were even boiled down before being flushed down the toilet. The bones were placed into 2 large black bags, the scene inside. That room was horrifying during this time. Foaming returned to her original rental place to grab some clothes, discarded her dirty white shoes, and went to Lang's car to find the IOU. However, she didn't find it. It turned out that Lu Ping had left the papers in his office locker, and they were later discovered by a nurse in the spine and orthopedic surgery department to avoid suspicion. Funing even impersonated Luo Ping and sent a text message to his wife to buy some time. His wife had asked why he hadn't been home for days. The text message replied, I'm out of town for surgery and can't come home last night. I was drunk, so I couldn't answer the phone. By the evening of the 22nd, Ling's wife had a bad feeling. Why wasn't he answering her call? She immediately called the hospital to inquire, and the staff on duty replied, "Dr. Luo Ping hasn't had any surgeries these past few days." As a result, Ling's wife called the police and filed a report identifying him as the victim when Fing was arrested. She didn't deny the crime. In fact, she displayed a very calm demeanor after the first trial. Funing was sentenced to death for intentional murder and theft. Upon hearing the verdict, Fing's father fainted. After regaining consciousness, he filed an appeal. He couldn't comprehend how his daughter's life had been completely destroyed in just a few short years. On December 22, 2020, the Guangse High People's Court held the second trial. Throughout this horrific case, Fing mostly described her crimes in a rather calm tone. Many experts believe that this demeanor stems partly from her profession as a nurse. Funing was likely very familiar with illness and accidents, making her somewhat desensitized to such scenes. According to the prosecutors, she had an inappropriate extramarital affair with the victim. Funing, on the other hand, insisted that she had been coerced and threatened into having an illicit relationship with him. She reacted sharply, stating, "How could I possibly like him? Just seeing him made me feel sick. He was a fat man over 50, and he wasn't even worthy to be my father." However, the chat history between the two on their cell phones had been deleted and could not be recovered. Thus, the court could not determine whether Funing had been threatened or not, but she had voluntarily gone to hotels with Luo Ping multiple times. Furthermore, on the day of the incident, she allowed the victim into the rented house after 10 p.m. This testimony was deemed inconsistent, and her claim that she was forced into the relationship was unconvincing. The court concluded that Liaoning had a dispute with the victim over debt issues, which led to an argument followed by her killing the victim and attempting to dispose of the body. The nature of the crime was extremely brutal, leaving a harmful impact on society. Therefore, she had to be punished severely according to the law on August 20th, 2022. The Guangse High Court delivered a public ruling upholding the verdict from the first trial and rejecting the appeal. This time, her father accepted the reality that he would lose his daughter forever. It was indeed a heartbreaking conclusion for her family and those who cared for her. The next case recovering took place on a stormy night in the town of Anlu, Shagan City, Hub Province, China, on the evening of August 23, 2014. A sudden heavy downpour flooded the streets and alleys of Anlu for the residents of the town. On a night like this, there was nothing better than enjoying a good night's sleep. However, Lechuning, a 41-year-old woman, was sitting at home anxiously unable to sleep because her husband Fan Deween hadn't come home yet. Even worse, his phone had been off for a long time. This had never happened before, which only heightened Li's concern. Initially, she and her family members planned to go out and search for him, but the rain outside showed no signs of stopping that night, so Li could only sit and wait for the morning to come. The next day, Li called upon her relatives and friends to help in the search. They all wandered around searching everywhere for the missing man, but strangely, after searching all day, they still had no news or clues about Dian's whereabouts. At this point, Li realized that something terrible might have happened to her husband, so she decided to report his disappearance to the ENL town police. News of the police investigation quickly spread throughout the town, as Dawin was the owner of a factory there. He had assets worth tens of millions of dollars and numerous connections. This made the case draw significant attention from the community. There were various rumors about the reasons behind Dian's disappearance. Some people suggested that Dawin had been kidnapped because of his wealth, which could bring the kidnappers a large ransom. Others speculated that Dawin had made enemies during his business dealings and was being hunted down. Still others said that Dawin had an affair and was murdered. Faced with growing public interest, the Anno police had to act quickly. The first thing they needed to do was determine the exact time and location of Dian's disappearance. Based on Li's testimony, Dawin had left home in the family car on the afternoon of August 23rd, but around 11:55 p.m. That same day, his daughter saw her father's car parked under the building. This suggested that Dwyn may have returned home in his car that night. However, no one knew the exact time he returned. Using the specific characteristics of Dian's car, the Enlo police collected surveillance footage from roads he might have traveled on to investigate and verify further. As a result, the police discovered that at 11:35 p.m. that same night, Dian's car was captured by a surveillance camera near an intersection. Based on this, the Enlo police established that the time frame of Dian's disappearance was likely between 11:35 p.m. and 11:55 p.m. on August 23rd. So what happened during this short window of time? The police decided to begin investigating the routes Darwin took while driving home, hoping to find some clues. However, due to the heavy rain that night and the late hour, many stores along the route had already closed. The police questioned people in the area, but no relevant information was collected. The only useful lead came from a neighbor who lived near Don's home. His name was Chun Muku, a repair and car wash service provider. Chun Muku's shop was located right under the building where Don lived. According to Chun Muk's testimony, on the night of August 23rd, he suddenly heard painful cries coming from the nearby hallway. Following the sound, he believed it was from a grown man. However, due to the heavy rain, that night Chun Muku could only hear it faintly shortly afterward. The agonizing cries stopped. Based on this clue, the police went to the entrance of the hallway under Darwin's building to conduct a detailed investigation as expected. The investigators found a total of 7 bloodstains at the hallway entrance. 6 small bloodstains were scattered randomly on the ground near the entrance, and there was also 1 large bloodstain on the wall. Additionally, the investigators collected several human hairs in the northeast corner of the wall. The blood and hair were then sent to the police department for DNA analysis. The results showed that the 7 bloodstains at the hallway entrance, as well as the hair, all belonged to Darwin, the man who had been missing for the past 36 hours. Therefore, the police speculated that Dian's last known location before disappearing was likely at this hallway entrance. Based on the small and scattered bloodstains, the Enlu police made an initial profile of the suspect. First, they concluded that on the night of August 23rd, Fondon only suffered minor external injuries. It was possible that he had been kidnapped by an unknown individual, but the wounds were not severe and were not life-threatening. Considering the victim Darwin a healthy adult male, it seems surprising that the perpetrator could easily carry out the kidnapping. Therefore, it's likely that the suspect was also a large, physically strong man. Additionally, the perpetrator may have been armed or had accomplices. Secondly, the choice of the hallway entrance, as the crime scene indicates that the perpetrator knew Don's home address, suggesting that the criminal could have been someone within his network of relationships. Third, after abducting Doween, the perpetrator left the scene undetected. This suggests that they likely used a vehicle that night, and they were familiar with the traffic patterns in ENL. Since the case involved the life, the ENL City Police quickly formed a special investigation team and deployed 3 groups of officers to conduct a comprehensive investigation. The first group was tasked with monitoring Don's house, waiting for a ransom call from the kidnappers. The second group investigated Don's social connections and those of his family. The third group focused on the building, where his family lived, conducting interviews and collecting statements within a 3 million radius, hoping to find witnesses before and after the crime. Initially, everyone thought this was a well-organized kidnapping for financial gain. However, what surprised the police was that 48 hours after the incident, no one had called to demand a ransom. Meanwhile, the police received an even stranger piece of information from another witness, a middle-aged man named Liang Jun. He told the police that on the night of August 23rd, around 11:30 p.m., he was standing in front of a hotel to take shelter from the rain. He saw 3 people standing at the entrance of a stairwell across the street, moving back and forth. According to Liang Jun's memory, one of the men appeared to have drunk too much and was lying on the ground. 2 women helped him stand up and quickly left the stairwell. Since this time frame matched the period of Dian's disappearance, the police speculated that the drunken man Liang Jun saw could have been Darwin the missing. Man, however, that night it seems Darwin wasn't lying on the ground due to intoxication. But because of a sudden attack, the police asked Liang Jun if he could recall the appearance of the 2 women. But Liang Jun replied that the heavy rain and dim street lights made it hard for him to see clearly. However, he distinctly remembered that one of the women was wearing a white dress, while the other appeared to be wearing a light gray coat. and she had fairly long hair. When they heard this information, the investigators still found it very strange in their previous theories. The police had never considered the possibility that Dawin could have been kidnapped by two women if what the witness Ling Jun said was true. Then who were these two women? Why were they at Dian's home late at night, and why was he seemingly unguarded? At this point, the police on the investigation team began to believe that this was likely a crime committed by someone Don knew, and perhaps his wife. We might be withholding some clues while waiting for a ransom call from the kidnappers. The second group of officers began interrogating Dian's family based on his wife Lee's testimony. Although her husband was a well-known businessman in Onlu, they had both adhered to the principle of harmony in their more than 20 years of doing business. According to Lee's recollection, her husband had never had a heated argument or conflict with anyone, and there were no financial disputes or debts in his business. Dealings, the police encouraged Lee to think back and try to remember if anyone they knew frequently wore a white dress or a coat. However, after thinking, carefully responded, "I don't have any impression of that over the past 2 years. My husband has mostly focused on his business outside of the home, and I don't know much about the female friends he's met." Although the initial interrogation did not yield any useful clues from Lee's testimony, her unusual behavior following the incident made the investigators slightly suspicious. From the moment the case was reported, we had consistently maintained that her husband was not kidnapped but murdered. She even told the police that she had a bad feeling that her husband's body had been thrown into a river near On El called the Few River. Based on this intuition, Lee had asked some of her relatives and family friends to search the Fu River. However, faced with this unsubstantiated claim, the investigation team did not pay much attention to it. They suspected that Lee might be hiding some unspeakable secrets by August 27, 2014. For days after the case began, the police still had not received any ransom demands from the kidnappers. Then around 4 p.m. That day, bad news arrived from the police station. It turned out that at around 9 a.m. that morning, a body had been found floating near the Few River. According to the witness Su Shaw, on the morning of August 27th, he went to the banks of the Few River as he usually did to fish. It was a peaceful and quiet time for fishing. However, while fishing, he suddenly noticed a large object floating from the middle of the river without initially realizing what it was. At first, Suya thought it was just a discarded mannequin used for selling clothes, but when the object drifted about 10 feet from the shore, Sushia suddenly realized it was a real human body. After 5 minutes of shock and fear, Sushia finally regained his composure. He immediately called the police. Once the body was retrieved, the Enlo police found that the entire body had become swollen. The victim was a middle-aged man wearing a white Jinba brand shirt, while his pants had been removed and tightly tied around his legs. Additionally, weights were tied to the victim's ankles and wrists, and each was secured with steel wires. It was clear this was a murder, and the perpetrator had disposed of the body in the river to eliminate evidence and cover up the crime. During the investigation, the police found a blood test report in the victim's pants pocket. Unfortunately, the paper had been soaked in river water and the writing was smeared and illegible. The body was then taken back to the police station for a more thorough examination after analyzing and comparing the DNA. The forensic team finally confirmed the identity of the victim as Dawin, who had been missing for the past 4 days upon hearing the news of Dian's death. His wife, Lee, felt as though her world had collapsed, although she had a premonition of her husband's fate. Facing the painful reality, we said she couldn't convince herself to accept such a cruel truth. The news of Dean's murder quickly spread throughout. Onlu, a wealthy local businessman, had been kidnapped right under his apartment building and then brutally murdered. Such a heinous act sparked outrage and fear within the community. People became afraid to leave their homes and walk the streets as the area no longer felt as safe as it once did. This mounting public pressure put the police under increasing stress considering the specific characteristics of the victim. The investigators developed 2 possible theories regarding Dian's unusual death. The first theory was that the crime was motivated by a personal or romantic conflict. The second was that the crime stemmed from a business dispute, since witnesses had seen 2 suspicious women around the time of the crime. The Ino police leaned toward the first theory, that the murder resulted from a personal conflict. As a result, the investigative team decided to question Don's wife, Lee. Once again, however, Lee insisted that her husband could not have been involved in an affair as their romantic life had been well maintained. Some of Dian's friends also told the police that he wasn't the type to engage in infidelity. After a series of investigations and interviews, the police concluded that in the minds of his family and friends, Dawen was simply a hard-working businessman with a respectable private life. Therefore, the likelihood that he was murdered over a romantic dispute seemed low, but how could they explain the presence of two women at the crime scene? Could it be that Dian's enemies had hired assassins to kill him from the shadows? The investigation team decided to conduct a thorough inquiry into Dian's rise to wealth to uncover possible answers. Their findings revealed some surprising leads going back 17 years to 1997 in Chupong village. Leongtown Onl Doween, at age 34, had begun managing a road construction project in the town. Due to his diligence and excellent work ethic, he successfully completed these projects and built up a solid network and valuable experience. Starting in 2003, a wave of self-initiated home construction began among villagers in Onlu. Seeing an opportunity, Dawen decided to open a cement business with his wife, leveraging his established connections and prior experience. The couple rapidly grew their cement business. In less than 5 years. They became the largest cement suppliers in the city, and their wealth quickly surged to the hundreds of millions in Chinese yuan to expand his business further. In early 2012, Dawen took over a clay manufacturing plant in Onlu. This plant primarily supplied materials to tile production companies in the area to avoid price competition. Dian aided with 6 other clay plants in town and agreed to set a standardized price for clay materials in early 2014. Initially, this agreement benefited everyone in the clay industry, but it displeased the largest local tile manufacturer. As a result, the tile company named Lin Xiang hired some local gangsters to monitor other tile plants in Onlu. Whenever they discovered a plant purchasing clay from Dwin, these enforcers would threaten and prevent them from doing so. Due to this, D had a conflict with Lin Xiang Tile Company. However, these disputes were relatively minor, and after mediation by local authorities, the tension between Dawen and Leineng Tile Company gradually eased. The police decided to question some employees of Leineng Tile Company. Among them, the key figure was a 32-year-old man named He F. The police asked He Fei about his whereabouts on the night of the crime, and He confidently responded that he was with someone named Chi. On the night of August 23rd, Chi happened to be the financial director of Lin Chang Tile Company, while He Fei was his personal driver. To verify He Fei's alibi, the Enlo police interviewed Chi Wei, and the results confirmed that Chi Wei's account matched. He Faz, additionally, Li Dian's wife, mentioned that He's father and Dwin were cousins, and the relationship between the two families had always been good at this point. The police ruled He out as a suspect. Because of this, the investigation hit a dead-end end. The police had investigated all of Dean's social connections, but whether related to romantic affairs or business dealings, nearly every suspect had been inexplicably eliminated. As a result, the investigators were forced to reassess the entire case. Based on the witness Liang Jun's description on the night of the crime, he saw 2 women abducting Dawen, one wearing a white dress and the other in a light gray coat with long flowing hair. From this, the police reasoned that if these 2 women were responsible for Dawing's murder that night, they must have used a vehicle to transport his body from the crime scene to the disposal site. Therefore, the police mapped out the main routes from the crime scene to the surrounding area. They then collected surveillance footage from cameras along these routes during the time frame of the crime. The police carefully reviewed each video. Fortunately, because the crime occurred late at night, there weren't many vehicles on the road after multiple reviews. One car caught the police's attention from the surveillance footage at around 11:19 p.m. On August 23rd, 2014, a black car was seen moving very slowly near an intersection close to the crime scene. It circled the intersection as if waiting for something, however, due to the heavy rain. That night, the surveillance cameras could not capture the car's license plate. Clearly, the investigators had to rely on the surveillance footage along the route to track the movements of this vehicle. Finally, at a toll booth, a clear image of the car was captured, allowing the police to see the full details of the vehicle. It was a black Audi with a license plate beginning with 2K and ending with 030. After checking the system, the police discovered that the owner of the vehicle was Wang Bang, a 46-year-old local resident of Anlu. The police then looked into Wang Bang's background and found that he had been involved in several illegal activities. In Anlu, with his criminal history, Wang Bang was considered a notorious figure in the area. This was a crucial lead, but the investigators didn't act hastily. They first looked into the relationship between Wang Bi Gang and Dawin. Their investigation revealed that although the two had crossed paths, there were no clear conflicts or disputes between them. On September 1, 2014, the police summoned Wang Bang for questioning during the interrogation. Wang Bi Gang revealed an unexpected piece of information in the interrogation room. He admitted to the Eno police that although the Audi was registered in his name, it was frequently used by his son, Wang Xa Zhang. Wang Xa Zhang was then summoned for questioning as well. According to Wang Xa Zhang's statement, the reason he was driving around that intersection was because his girlfriend lived nearby on the night of the crime. Wang Xa Zhang had driven his girlfriend home. However, after a minor argument, they got into a fight. As a result, Wang Xa Zhang drove slowly, trying to explain and resolve the issue with his girlfriend, faced with Wang Zhejiang's somewhat hard-to-believe account. The Enlo police decided to question his girlfriend. Their stories matched perfectly to ensure there were no mistakes. The investigators conducted a thorough search of Wang Zhejiang's Audi. After inspecting the vehicle, they found no suspicious traces or evidence linking it to the crime. Feeling frustrated, the police had no choice but to rule out any suspicion of Wang Xa Zhang. The investigators then had to continue reviewing the surveillance footage. They found a total of 8 other vehicles that passed through the area before and after the crime. After carefully examining each vehicle, the police still came up with nothing. How could a vehicle leave the crime scene without leaving any trace? The investigation team decided to reconsider the details of the case. Eventually, they all agreed that searching for the perpetrator through the vehicle was the right approach. If they hadn't found any clues while reviewing the surveillance footage, they must have missed something. Therefore, the police decided to increase their manpower and conduct a more thorough examination of all the surveillance videos from nearby roads on the night of the crime. As expected, they discovered an important lead from the crime scene. To the body disposal site, investigators spotted the same 3-wheeled vehicle at several intersections in the surveillance footage. What was even more peculiar was that in the back of the 3-wheeled vehicle, the police noticed a person sitting there. Though the image wasn't clear, unfortunately, the surveillance footage didn't capture the person's face. To track the entire route of this 3-wheeled vehicle, the investigators accessed surveillance footage from the surrounding roads in the days before and after the crime. After painstakingly reviewing the footage for a full day and night, the investigators found the 3-wheeled vehicle on a road near the pedestrian area in a nearby urban district. But surprisingly, the back compartment of the vehicle had disappeared clearly. This was another attempt by the perpetrator to destroy evidence. At this point, the police believed that if this 3-wheeled vehicle was indeed used to support the victim, then the back compartment of the vehicle must still have some traces of the crime. Therefore, the surveillance review team continued monitoring the footage. Finally, they discovered that the back compartment had been removed on a road near the outskirts of town. Based on the location of this road, the investigation team quickly found the discarded compartment at a motorcycle repair shop. Forensic experts then discovered a small cleaned blood stain in one corner of the compartment. After conducting DNA analysis, the police confirmed that the blood sample belonged to the victim, Dawin. This meant that the 3-wheeled vehicle was indeed used to transport the victim. Using this as a starting point, the investigation team quickly identified the owner of the 3-wheeled vehicle as Xing Shuo, a 28-year-old from Hunan province. At this point, the police began a covert investigation into Shuo's social connections. First, investigators questioned Dian's wife, Li. According to her statement, Shuo had no connection and no conflict or disagreement between them. If Li's account was accurate, then Shuo appeared to have no motive for the crime. But why was Dian's blood found on Esho's 3-wheeled vehicle? Upon further investigation, the police discovered that Shuo had only recently moved to Anlu and he was currently working at none other than Lin Kong, the company that had a business dispute with Dwin. and had been investigated earlier. Even more surprising was that Shuo had been introduced to the company by Huff through surveillance. The police learned that Huff and Shuo had been friends since their time at martial arts school. Their relationship was very close, although the investigation team had previously ruled out Huff due to a lack of evidence. This connection with Shuo brought Huff back onto the list of suspects. As a result, the investigators decided to revisit Huff's movements on the night of the crime. They discovered that Huff's driving patterns on the night of August 23rd were highly unusual at around 7 p.m. On August 23rd, investigators confirmed that Huff's personal vehicle had left the ENL City area and headed toward his hometown in Liang, then at around 8:30 p.m. Surveillance footage captured Huff's vehicle returning to Onlu later at approximately 3 a.m. That same night Huff drove back to Liang. This strange journey was entirely different from Huff's usual routine and didn't match the timeline he had previously provided to the police. In his earlier statement, Huff claimed he had been with the company's financial director, Chi, all night during the crime. Clearly, Huff had lied to the police, but why did Chi back up Huff's false alibi? The investigation team found this highly suspicious, so they decided to question Chi again. Chi explained that on August 23rd, he had been drinking with clients in a private room for most of the evening. During that time, Huff was free to come and go, and it wasn't until after 1 a.m. that Huff picked him up and drove him home in Chi's memory. Huff had been with him all night. This false testimony strongly suggested that Huff had the opportunity to commit the crime on the night of Don's murder. However, the investigation team remained cautious to avoid jumping to conclusions, as they suspected that there might be additional suspects involved on the night of the crime, including the two women the witness had seen. The team speculated that beyond Huff Suya and the two women there could be others behind the scenes, orchestrating and giving orders. With this theory in mind, the police assigned 5 officers to conduct a covert and detailed investigation into the social networks of Huff and Suya. The police examined their bank accounts but found no unusual transactions or transfers. After further investigation yielded no evidence of anyone behind the scenes, the investigation team decided to proceed with an arrest on September 6, 2014, until police arrested Huff and Suya faced with overwhelming evidence. Suya confessed to the crime and implicated Huff as the mastermind during further interrogation. Although Huff and Suya revealed the truth about the woman in the white dress, the officers conducting the interviews were left disturbed, contemplating Huff's true motive for the crime. Looking back to mid-July 2014, Huff and Daeon had clashed several times over business matters related to Clay. According to Huff's confession, one of their arguments escalated into a physical confrontation involving just the two of them. At the time, Daeon had voluntarily gone to Huff's house to negotiate a resolution, but Huff, being hot-tempered, refused to listen. He insulted and verbally attacked Daeon before leaving Daeon in a fit of anger, made a threatening remark saying, "If you don't stop interfering, I'll kill you sooner or later." Although spoken in the heat of the moment, Huff took this comment to heart. The more he thought about it, the more he felt uneasy. Eventually, Huff decided that he needed to act first to protect himself. He then called his close friend and accomplice Su Xiao to carry out the murder to avoid police detection. Ha and Suao carefully planned the crime for over a month. First, they bought several items for the crime, including a women's wig, a long dress, a cloak, some steel wire, and weights. Next, Huff visited Don's residence multiple times to gather information on the evening of August 23, 2014. Huff returned to his hometown of Liang and happened to see Daeon dining with a few friends from this. Huff guessed that Daeon would return home late, so he decided to carry out the crime. That night, Huff first drove back to Anlu City, then called Suao to bring the necessary tools for the crime to avoid police surveillance. Huff instructed Su Xiao to use his old 3-wheeled vehicle around 10:30 p.m. That evening, Huff put on a long wig while Su Xiao wore a white floral dress. They quietly approached Don's residence. Huff parked the 3-wheeled vehicle in a location without surveillance cameras, then hid to watch Don's return home. Meanwhile, Suya hid in the hallway ready to ambush Daeon at around 11:40 p.m. Daeon parked his car beneath his building and headed toward the staircase entrance. At that moment, Suya suddenly stepped forward and blocked his path. Delivering a strong punch to Dayan's head after being struck, Dayan immediately fought back during the struggle. Dayan's head hit the wall and he collapsed to the ground. Silent and motionless, immediately after Huff and Suya quickly loaded Don into the back of the three-wheeled vehicle. Huff claimed, "I didn't directly kill the victim. I only helped Suya dispose of the body." However, according to the forensic report, Don's actual cause of death was strangulation leading to suffocation. This contradicted Huff's account of the events. Moreover, after Dayan died, his body was intentionally dumped into the river. The steel wire and weights used had been prepared by Huff before the crime. This clearly indicated that the murder was a premeditated act carried out by both criminals. After taking statements, the Eno police brought Huff and Su Xiao to the building where Don lived to verify the crime scene. However, in an unexpected turn of events, Don's family happened to witness this. His wife Lee was utterly shocked she lost control and rushed to attack Huff. But fortunately, the police intervened in time to prevent it. Li Ching said that she could not believe that the biological son of a friend her husband had once helped would turn out to be his murderer. However, Huff would now face the heavy consequences of his impulsive and reckless actions on November the 25th of 2014. The Intermediate People's Court of Hub Province issued its first instance verdict. The defendant Half was sentenced to death for premeditated murder, while Xing Suao was sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial's outcome was met with overwhelming support from the public behind this tragic case. We once again see the complexity of human nature and the fragility of life. Hopefully, we can all take a lesson from this to remain calm and rational in the face of conflict and disputes as the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper. Thank you for joining me here at Mr. Sherlock Holmes. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware, even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. If you've enjoyed tonight's tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep, and until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.